How many trees did we kill over this?
They were already dead. Just gave them a purpose.
Just plant more.
Probably came off all those limbs in the park. Oh, great. All right. It is Monday, February 7th, and we are here this evening for a special city council meeting for the purpose of interviewing city manager finalists. I hereby call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson,
Present?
Mayor Milan,
Yeah, here.
Councilmember Sampson,
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Here.
Great. So are you coming to tell us how we're handling this?
Sure.
Yes. No, I don't. I think it will be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. We're here for second interviews for 3 individuals for the position of city manager. You have a few pieces of paper in front of you. I'm not sure what order they are in now, but I'll tell you the order that they were placed there. You have a packet of the candidate information. It's just a mini with their information and a couple notes in there that I've updated. That's also, you have a memo dated February 2nd, which is the assignment that these candidates had, and then clipped to that are the responses that they had asked me to print. 2 of the candidates this evening will have PowerPoint presentations in response to the questions given to them. The other packet that you have are the questions that have been provided for you this evening. If I may make a suggestion, the first 2 questions are the ones that we've asked them to prepare for. The first is that they prepare a short presentation of themselves, and the second is a short scenario question with regard to the master plan for the city of Clawson. My suggestion, if the mayor is okay with it, is that she just introduce those 2 questions to the candidates to say, give us those 2 things. You can read it right off the script, but then there's 2 questions each for each member of the city council after those 2, for a total of 10 questions. Again, as you did in your last meeting, the questions are provided for you if you choose to go in a different direction, particularly because this is a second round interview and you've heard these candidates before. That's your discretion. Please just be aware of the question sheet at the end of the packet that states the types of questions we may and may not ask. All 3 candidates are ready. All 3 candidates did participate in a discussion with your department heads this afternoon, as well as a brief meet and greet. I provided some feedback from department heads that were given to us, and then a little bit of feedback from the meet and greet. Those copies are also in front of you. Both of those are dated February 7th. Any questions for me before I invite our first candidate?
No, but would you please state your name and the company that you represent for anyone who's listening along?
That is awesome. Thank you,
welcome.
Mayor, and I apologize for that. James Vitrano, I'm with GovHR, and it's been a pleasure to help you through this city manager search process. Thank you.
Okay, so our first candidate is Justin LeCamper. Justin, please come forward. We look forward to seeing what you have here for us. So in keeping with the flow of the questions, as we just heard, are these questions in order? Does it matter what you've been asked to prepare? They're in order on your presentation, correct? I don't want to scare him or throw you off. Sorry, I wouldn't think I would scare you, but let's not throw you off this early in the game. So you've been asked to prepare a formal presentation, and the instructions you were given were, please prepare a formal presentation of 3 to 5 minutes. Your presentation should provide an introduction of yourself, why you want to be Clawson's next city manager, and reasons you believe you will be successful as our next city manager.
Great. Thank you. Let me see if I can get this presentation up. So, is that correct? Vacancies, I need to go to, there we go. All right, so James has given us 5 minutes, so let me get started. Just a brief recap of my education and experience. I do hold a bachelor's degree from Kalamazoo College, and I hold a master's of public administration from Wayne State University with a concentration in urban and metropolitan policy and management. Shortly after going to Wayne, I worked in D.C. for an international think tank called the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. I'm currently the manager of the village of Edmore, and kind of interspersed in all of those experiences, I've worked in the field of heating and cooling, so I'm actually also a trained tradesman. A little bit about me personally. I'm a father of 3. I'm fairly well traveled. I'm a lifelong soccer player, but mostly these days I just coach the kids. And I grew up in Metro Detroit, in Ferndale, and in Rochester Hills. So I wanted to give you guys a few characteristics about myself, but I pulled all of these from previous evaluations that I'd received from other parts of my career. So they had observed in me that I was honest and self-reflective, that I used a data-driven approach to decision-making. I'm calm and level-headed, that I'm open, genuine, and approachable, that I'm a clear communicator, that I'm versatile, and that I'm a collaborative network builder. So why Clawson? I say ask your residents, and that is something that you did during the master planning process where you held an online survey. The vast majority of those responses to that question were positive responses. Your community referenced a sense of community, a location in Detroit, their public safety, their downtown character, and their parks and recreation options. The negative responses were, around vacant buildings and some needs for development in some of your corridors. And why is that important professionally to me? Well, all those things that people highlighted as why they love being in Clawson are reasons why one would want to be here to manage. And the reasons that they highlighted as being negative, those are opportunities for a manager. Fixing infrastructure, roads, dealing with lead and copper compliance, things of that nature. Those are problems for managers to solve. That's what we are, problem solvers. So those are really opportunities. You have active and engaged boards, from what I can tell. I've watched a few planning commission meetings. There's a lot of knowledge and a lot of professionalism there. And those boards are another whole big piece of this whole puzzle here. And it feels like a place to be for a significant period of time. At this point in my career and my life, that's what I'm looking for, is a place to be for a while and to grow. So why am I the right leader for you today? As I've mentioned before, I've worked with world leaders and policymakers from all over. This has exposed me to a wide range of policy areas and policy philosophies. It's given me a diplomatic tact and a lot of perspective, but it's also allowed me to facilitate communication amongst policy experts in fields that I'm not necessarily the expert in, and that is a scenario that you're often in as a manager with your department heads. I'm currently also aware of many municipal hats. Aside from being the zoning administrator, the manager, I'm also the zoning administrator, the code enforcement officer, and the DDA director. So these are all things that you have employees for here, but having done those things myself, that would greatly aid me in being able to guide them. And lastly, I have led teams across industries, as I mentioned before, in heating and cooling. That has given me a technical approach to problem solving, which I found very useful in a municipal setting. And lastly, I successfully led a community that had 3 managers in 4 years and a 7-month vacancy in the manager's office before I got there. I quickly built staff trust and rebuilt a sense of purpose in the organization by doing some simple things, reinstituting weekly department head meetings, but mostly encouraging input from all of our employees during the decision-making process. This is great for facilitating buy-in, and really establishing personal relationships with them has gone a long way. Also quickly restored public confidence in a similar manner through outreach, responsiveness, and competency. I met with business owners and community groups, established personal relationships with stakeholders, and I've always had an open door policy for our residents and business owners. So they know they can come to me when they have issues and that we're listening. And going back to that competency piece, very early on, we recognized that there were some major zoning issues that needed to be dealt with, and we did that quickly, which led to some very serious investment early on in my tenure there. And that really helped the population understand that we meant business and that we knew what we were doing. So that helped a lot. So I'm butting up right on about my 5 minutes here. I'll leave it at that.
Is it appropriate if anyone has any questions at this point, they can ask them? If anyone does, you may. Otherwise, we'll let him keep moving. Thank you for that. The second question was to choose one of the 8 goals from the Clawson Master Plan and develop a 5 to 8 minute presentation addressing the following points. Summarize why you believe this is an important goal for the city of Clawson. provide a brief evaluation of the objectives included in the master plan under the goal, and would you recommend adding any specific objectives to achieve the goal? And lastly, using your reading of the master plan, professional experience, and any research you may choose to do, provide specific short-term and long-term actions the city should take in order to achieve the stated goal.
Excellent. All right, let's get started. So I chose the community goal 3. There were 8 to choose from. So community goal 3 is to preserve, protect, and enhance the residential character of Clawson neighborhoods. The Planning Commission also outlined 4 objectives for that, which we will discuss. So why is community goal 3 important? Developed as a traditional bedroom community, Clawson is a city of neighborhoods, as you all know. In fact, 76% of Clawson are single and multifamily homes. Neighborhoods and the people that inhabit them are the soul of the city. Recognizing and doubling down on the strengths, your neighborhoods, produces better results than chasing an entirely new model. Smart and simplified zoning can enable and encourage improvements, and having welcoming, aesthetically pleasing, and versatile neighborhoods promotes investment while enhancing the living standards for existing residents. So continuing on, why is it important? Going back to that same survey that you conducted in your master plan, your residents outlined these as priorities for them. Community priorities: eliminating blighted structures, improving the appearance of residential neighborhoods, maintaining existing roadways, helping keep Clawson green by encouraging rigorous landscaping standards for development and redevelopment, and eliminating unnecessary regulations or barriers to creativity, namely zoning. So let's move on to the objectives. So objective A is to protect neighborhood character while allowing for property improvement. So what's the purpose of this? It's to promote investment in existing structures without changing the character of the neighborhood, finding that balance between new and old. Some short-term actions you could take would be to work with the Planning Commission to define character given changes in the housing market over the last 5 years from when your master plan was passed. Support and encourage the implementation of the clear zoning ordinance. Zoning can be a stumbling block for residents. It can be a stumbling block for developers. And so any way that you can make that more user-friendly and get that information in a clear, again, user-friendly way is going to entice investment. And promote MISHDA's Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund and Property Improvement Program with residents. And those are effectively financing options that they could use for home improvements today. Some long-term actions you could take would be to reevaluate zoning design, regulations for height, buildable area, and setbacks to allow for smart development. Some of these things are issues that a lot of communities in the area have dealt with over the last 20 years or so. So, looking to them for inspiration would be suggested. And addressing your road conditions. In the master plan, it highlights that 88% of your streets have a PASER rating of 5 or below. So if anybody's unfamiliar, PASER rating is a 1 through 10 scale of the condition of a road, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. Anything below 5 really starts getting into an area where you need to start reconstructing, perhaps some overlays and things like that, but you're moving on from just general maintenance. So that's 88%, that's a big number. So that's a long-term issue that needs to be dealt with. Objective B, encourage transitional development between single-family residential neighborhoods and commercial corridors. So what's the purpose of this? It creates more complete and walkable neighborhoods. It's attractive to younger generations, and it can infill underutilized spaces. In the short term, I would suggest that you promote the core residential zoning district, which was created with the intent of this to create this transitional purpose. I would promote that with developers, real estate agents, and the property owners in those districts, because they might not be aware of the fact that they have an entirely new permitted uses for the buildings that they own. Some long-term actions could be to combine your RM1 and RM2 districts, as is suggested in the future land use of the master plan, simply giving yourself more flexibility by creating 1 district out of 2. And prioritize non-motorized connections, bikes and pedestrians, between neighborhoods and business districts in your capital improvement planning process and its implementation. Moving on to Objective C is to encourage streetscape maintenance. Why do we do this? What's the purpose? It's cost effective, it creates a sense of place, and increases property values. Some short-term actions could be to highlight importance in city communications of doing so through your website, through your newsletter, through your social media. Some long-term actions would be to possibly implement a neighborhood beautification competition. This is something that I've had a little success with in Edmore. We have implemented a decoration competition around the holidays, and that has really gone a long way to entice people to compete against each other and spruce things up. And then lastly, to establish city programs to finance materials, flowers, lighting, sidewalk improvements as you move on. And lastly, we move to Objective D, which is to continue to enforce property maintenance code and ensure consistent enforcement. So this is an issue that many, many communities have. The purpose of it is it maintains a sense of order in place, and it increases property value. Some short-term actions you could take would be to continually educate the public of their duty as a citizen in Clawson through city communication, again, website, newsletter, social media. My experience with this has been that most noncompliance comes through not having the correct information about what is expected of one. So communicating what is expected is always good. Work with the code enforcement to prioritize offenses, establish timelines for voluntary enforced compliance. So by this I mean, go out looking for the specific things that you have identified as being high-level offenses that you want to take care of, and having codified timelines for voluntary compliance, and then moving on to forced compliance. This would help with ensuring that it's consistent. If you have those guidelines in place, then it's not different for anybody else. It never should be. It probably isn't, but that helps. And then lastly, for short-term actions, is to establish a resident handbook. A lot of this information is buried in an ordinance somewhere, on a website somewhere that's pretty difficult to obtain. So a lot of communities will take all the relevant things, your sign and your fence ordinance and your property maintenance code, and put it all together in a nice PDF, print a couple out, make sure that people can get them, have it prominently on the page, so that, again, that education piece, everybody knows what's expected of them, and that goes a long way. And long-term actions could be to establish geographical focus areas for enforcement. So now you're being more proactive than reactive. So the idea behind that would be, if your code enforcement feels a little bit spread thin, then you can establish geographical areas in town where you're going to focus for a set period of time. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 6 months, and then you move on to the next. That doesn't mean that you stop doing code enforcement in the entire city, but if you have some of these things can take a very long time and can take a lot more energy and resources to take care of. So if you've identified this is the area where we're going to do those things, then it helps with utilizing your resources. I'd also suggest perhaps reevaluating the property maintenance code for efficiency and effectiveness, fines and legal action. This is one thing that I've done in my community. We had a lot of things that were misdemeanors rather than a civil infraction. Something's a misdemeanor, you're less likely to enforce that as it is to give a ticket. And so, addressing those things, seeing if there's any way that you can tweak something to get better compliance, that would be important. And again, harping back to it again, continue public education. You're always going to have new residents. People forget things. People don't know. You always got to inform them of what's expected. So I'll leave it right there.
Excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to proceed with questions. We're going to take turns asking you questions, and I think I'm going to go first because I want to pivot off of something you just brought up. You piqued my interest when you talked about education pieces, and I'm curious if you have instituted any education pieces in the community that you currently represent, or if you have any examples of something other than what's here that you might think would be beneficial to a community such as Clawson.
In general?
Yeah.
So one of the, we're working on a lot of things currently. One of the things we did was we revamped our website and are working to get as much information on there as possible that we can get up there. So that's kind of where I'm at in that process with us. Many of these suggestions are things that we are either currently working on or I intend to work on. Community communication, social media can be a double-edged sword. There is a requirement to have it constantly backed up. There are companies out there that do those things. It can get it out of hand sort of quickly, but it is also a very quick and easy way to communicate with residents. So if you have something like a property maintenance handbook, putting it out there is going to get to a lot more people than if you could just have it on your website. right? Because if it's just on your website, somebody's got to be coming to look for it. Obviously, if somebody's following you on Facebook or whatever, they have made that step to follow, but there's much higher likelihood that you're going to reach them. So I think that those things can be useful. And one of the things I've done in the past, you guys have a newsletter, we have a newsletter. I usually take the time in the newsletter to explain one thing about what we do as a municipality. So the last newsletter I sent out, I explained how a DDA and a TIFA works, because I don't think most people know that. And, that's something that was an issue in our town. And I feel like if anybody read that, then they've got a better understanding about where those tax dollars are going, why they're assessed that way, and what they're being used for. So I do take a time. There's always the managers, the commentary in there, but that's just kind of, hey, what's going on? Here's what we're doing. So having an educational piece in there, I think, is important, and it can be really anything.
Okay, great, thank you. Councilmember Shepherd, would you like to take over?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate it. And again, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. My question is, how would you describe your management and leadership style? Please identify both strengths and weaknesses related to your management and leadership approach.
Sure. I've said before, I think a leader has to be foremost competent in what they're doing to get people to follow you. So that has got to be number one. Number two, I very much disdain micromanagement. We talked about this. It is something that can be useful. It is also something that is, again, a double-edged sword that you have to watch to make sure that those to whom you're giving a wide breadth, that they're using it appropriately. But in general, as a manager, you're not going to be the expert in all these fields. Your expertise is in leading and in decision making and bringing people to the proper decision, right? And so that's got to be an inclusive process that has to be with asking the right questions. A lot of times, my question initially is, what do you want to do? How do you see this problem? How should we solve this, right? And then you take that and then you go step by step, advancing on it. Okay, do we have the proper information? This is what you want to do. You should have this other information in place before you make that decision. Go get that. Things like that. So it's a conversation, and yeah, I guess I can leave it on that.
Any weaknesses?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I've given off this in the presentation here. I can be pretty relaxed with people, and it has in certain situations not been the appropriate response. And so I guess I could say that while I don't think it's a weakness overall, most of the time there are certain situations where that's not the appropriate way to handle things, and I've had that be a problem for me in very small scenarios.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Are you saying sometimes you have to show your teeth?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. All right, next question is, Clawson has several infrastructure projects that will need to be planned, budgeted for, and completed. Please describe your experience in addressing infrastructure needs and capital improvement plans of a community. I think many of these issues were already covered in your presentation. Perhaps you could expand a little bit on maybe how they will be financed, how you view the long-term planning for the infrastructure.
Sure. So my experience with infrastructure is pretty well related to water infrastructure and roads. The road situation that I have is a little bit different. The financing for that, we use the entirety of our Act 51 money to finance our road activities. We don't expend anything out of the general fund for that. That is one option that some communities use, and it's probably a portion of what should happen here. And in terms of water infrastructure, this is a large thing that many communities are dealing with. I've talked to your department head a little bit about it today, but in particular, you have the lead and copper compliance, right, for everybody over the next 15 years or so. We have gone through that process. We're still tying in the finance portion of it. However, that is, we have identified all of our lead and copper needs that we have. The beginning of last year, everybody had to turn in what's called DSMI. That was establishing your baseline for what you have going on. Right now, we're all in the process of digging up what we don't know what's going on. So that's our next financing point that we've been dealing with. The ARPA funds have come into play for us there quite heavily. That will go a long way for what we need to be doing. And then we needed to tie those expenditures into our water rates. I mean, that's really the only way to handle the situation long term, is that your water fund is an enterprise fund, right? So it should be, all of the capital improvements should be financed through the business-like activity that it is. And so if you know that you have X amount of dollars that need to be expended over a certain period of time, you can fit that into your water rate structure, and that's how it has to be. If that doesn't happen, which can be the case, then you have to start looking at other opportunities that you could have. Grants, grants are a good thing, but it's nothing that you can bet on to take care of those problems. In terms of your roads, you effectively have three options. You have a dedicated millage option, right? You can do special assessments and revenue bonds, okay? So none of those things are enticing by any means to do for a council or a manager, but that might be something that you'd be looking into as you want to get going on taking care of some of those roads. And all of those, and with your capital improvement process, you should be having a fairly accurate understanding of how much those things cost. And as you have placed that in your 5-year plan and update it every year, squirreling that away in your capital improvement funds, is how it works. So,
Okay. Thank you.
My turn.
Councilmember Sampson.
Okay, one of my favorite things. Please describe how you evaluate the performance of city employees. Please address both your review of the department heads and more broadly, the review of the staff members.
So we do annual reviews. I know some places like to do that a little bit more often. I think that kind of depends on the situation you have. I conduct performance reviews with the department heads, and they conduct performance reviews with their staff. I typically, before they do their staff or performance reviews, I will review those staff members with them, kind of go over what they're thinking, how they're feeling, give them a little bit of coaching on the HR aspects of it, and they actually conduct those, and then we will review them all together with the employee, but they initially do it. My evaluation process with the department heads, it is, we have a form that's laid out so that it's the standardized over time so that they can track their scores. It's all numbered over time to see if they're improving. But then there's also the aspect of the input from them. What do they see as their strengths? What do they see as their weaknesses? What they should be working on? And then we set some goals for them for the next year. A lot of the times with my department heads, they're aces in what they do day to day. A lot of the things that they need to work on are their management skills, because they might be wonderful at exchanging water lines, but managing other people is a different thing. So a lot of our conversations revolve around that. These happen between us. And like I said, it's an annual process. We do it in November because typically it's tied to some sort of wage increase so that we can then include that in our budget in February.
Okay. I'd like to know what you enjoy most about being a city manager, and maybe provide a couple of examples of something that went really well that made you enjoy it. And then also tell me what you find most challenging about being a city manager and how you work in those situations.
One of the things that really attracted me to the profession initially is the versatility of it. I really enjoy the fact that I'm involved in all the different departments, that I'm not working on one thing over and over again all day long. That's not what I intended to do with my life, and so I'm happy that I'm in something where I can do that. And also the aspect of getting out in the community, talking to people, working with business owners. Those are all things that I certainly enjoy doing. Something that has gone great, I would say, trying to think of like a specific instance. We have, I guess I got a feel-good one. You know, we installed new park equipment, right? We got a grant for it. We put in a bunch of new park equipment. We had a community build. A lot of people came out. I helped. It was a good time, and it was just a nice moment. We created something new, you know, for the kids. It's a small community. We have one park. It was good. Something that's bad.
Challenging.
Challenging. Sorry, that's right. You said that. I said that.
You describe it how you want.
Right. You know, there are a lot of demands. Funding is always an issue. Most people are generally respectful of those things, but sometimes there are, you know, situations where you have people who are upset about something that has gone on, and so those can be challenging. Typically, try to deal with that with really just giving all the information. And if it's simply a situation where we mess something up, you know, apologizing, saying, you know, I had a DPW worker take out a mailbox the other day, right? What do? You go and apologize to them and you repair it. That's all you can do. And everything was great. But I'm just saying, if there is a situation where we really are at fault, admitting to that, taking care of it. And then when there's something that maybe there's just a misunderstanding due to lack of information, you give that as well as you can, and move forward. Whether that solves it or not, it's not always the case.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilmember Shepherd.
Thank you. Please share an experience when you applied new technology or a new process. How did the new technology or process improve the community you're managing?
So you might chuckle a little bit, but we are implementing credit cards for utility bill payment and for permitting right now, both online payments and at our front desks. So that process has involved some software upgrades that we've needed to do, buying a little bit of machinery and getting our front office staff trained on that information, on that machinery and that software. You know, people love it. It's been something that they've been asking for quite a while. We haven't had it long enough for me to really see if it's going to make a change in our delinquency and payments, but I'm anticipating that it will. So that will be a positive, positive thing for the residents.
Who's that partnered with?
What partner?
You have a financial institution that's partnered with it, or?
Yeah, there's a third party, basically a third party website that ties it into our financial software, and it just works with our bank.
Huh, okay. Well, interesting. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Is there a time when if there is a time, when budget cuts must be implemented? Please describe the process you would follow to fairly and equitably determine areas of the budget to be reduced.
Right.
No easy answer. Take your time.
No. I guess, fortunately for me and unfortunately for my response here, it's not something I've personally dealt with yet. I would say you would need to obviously prioritize importance. This is also going to be depending on what fund you're talking about, say a general fund. So we have a large breadth of things happening in that fund. I would say you really trying to look for that low-hanging fruit, simple things you can cut out. But if you are alluding to how you manage to deal with the bad news that, perhaps something can't be bought or perhaps a raise can't be given, that's got to come. It's got to come directly from you. It's got to come with the clear expectation or a clear explanation of why that was selected, and hopefully that selection of that cut was very, clearly or very soberly sought out as this is not a high priority item, and we need to do these things. We need to cut the X amount of dollars, and also show that the burden has been shared, if it has been shared, in other directions. And those are one of those things that you got to kind of learn to swallow, so.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sampson?
Please give us an example of a time you faced an ethical dilemma, how you handled it, and what you learned from it.
Yeah. So I've dealt with council members who have, against our charter and manager's ordinance, insisted on some personnel changes, which is different in different places, and there's procedures for those things, but as I've indicated, in our situation, that would have not been their purview, right? And so that is a very strong ethical dilemma, because I have, these documents to follow, but I also have a body to please in some ways. So I eventually ended up having the conversations explaining as to why that was not how things are done, and that it shouldn't be done that way, and did not directly act on their requests. And that was difficult for me as a manager, but it was the right thing to do in that situation.
Okay.
Please describe a situation you've handled where the community faced a contentious issue with a strong, diverging opinions, and what did you learn from this experience?
Yeah.
Or make one up, because your community probably doesn't have contentious issues.
Not anymore.
Yay. The peacemaker's here.
So, yeah, I mean, we haven't really had any, full chambers over a specific issue as of late. But in the recent past, they've had a lot of differing opinions about what the DDA should be doing, particularly with their specific building that was purchased by the DDA and renovated by the DDA with a large USDA grant. But it did tie up some, the DDA's funds, and so there were a lot of very strong opinions as to why it should have ever been done and what should be done with the building going forward. Okay, so when I came in, the building was half finished, and it was at a point where we had to decide whether or not we were going to invest a little bit more money to get it to a point where we could use it or not. And it had stalled at that point because nobody wanted to invest any more money. There was a rift between the two boards, and we very quickly worked to get the boards together, held some joint sessions where they met together to deal with it. So I know that you're asking about the community being upset about it. However, again, we don't get a lot of involvement. A lot of people go and talk to their council member, their board member about these things. So there was a lot of community outreach about this building beforehand. But again, like I said, it just was at this stalled point, and nobody wanted to invest anything else into it. So we were able to provide a third option to invest a little bit more and get the majority of the building open so that we could be using it for a marketable commercial purpose. We use it it's essentially a wedding venue now, and it's a very nice venue. We have people coming from all over the place to use it, and thanks to COVID, we've a huge backlog of weddings. But in that scenario, just really presenting the idea that if we just do this a little bit more, that we are going to be able to get some income, and you're going to have a benefit out of it, because right now you don't have any benefit from it. So that was important in explaining that. And as I said, haven't experienced them coming out directly on it, but I have heard now, since we have the doors open and now things are going, that people are much more excited about it being open than they were beforehand. And that would just comes out of giving them a result, letting them see the building, actually going inside physically, using it when they need to. So that has worked out well.
Thank you. Councilmember Shepherd.
Thank you. Please describe how you would encourage all members of the public, regardless of background, viewpoints, and experiences, to participate in city government.
Yeah. So, most people participate when they have a vested interest in something. Most people come to a meeting if they're upset about something. So, hopefully not all meetings are that exciting that people want to show up to everything about all the time. But if you're talking about getting people on boards, getting them involved in this, I think most people don't know what a DDA is. Most people don't know what a planning commission is, and that's not any disparaging of any person. It's just not in your daily life. So again, trying to get that information out there about what it is that those boards are doing, how that board fits into the puzzle of governance. The fact that the planning commission is completely responsible for the master plan, which has a huge impact on land use decisions, and the capital improvement process, which has a huge impact on budgetary decisions. That's an entirely separate body. I don't believe that most people would know that. So getting that information out, how do you do that? You have your traditional channels, like I mentioned before, the newsletter with the informational piece in it. But trying to, I guess, to kind of spruce up your public notices, by also not just putting it in the 3 places that it has to be out on the board out here and there, and throw it on Facebook. Let people know that you are meeting and what you're meeting about. I think that's important, and so. And then also, you have your boards. I met some of your very committed citizens here tonight. Many of them are on boards. Having them reach out to people, having them reach out in their communities, asking to be involved in what they want to do with, or what they would like to be involved in. Those are all good ways.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
All right.
You got ad lib now.
How are we on
Right,
time?
you gotta-
Are we,
My God, I gotta think for myself. Oh, this is gonna hurt. I just, Mr. LeCamp, one question I would have is, you are making the transition from Edmore to Clawson would be a significant one in terms of the number of people you'd have to manage. Like you said, when you're working a small operation, you have to wear many hats. A larger operation, you have to rely on your subordinates. So I guess my general question is, I'm going back to an earlier statement you made on micromanagement, right? When you're used to wearing many hats, you're forced to micromanage, right? Sometimes you're micromanaging yourself.
Very much so.
How do you expect to make that transition between Village of Edmore with a relatively small number of employees to a city that's got a significantly larger number, to whom you're really going to have to depend heavily upon your department heads
Right.
and their supervisors to do things?
Right. There's certainly a learning curve there. I can't deny that. And I feel like you've answered it a little bit for me in leading on the department heads, and understanding, really what they're doing day to day, so that information is channeling up to me in the proper way. I don't. I think that a lot of things are, even though we on a daily basis, I'm dealing with far fewer people, I still think that a lot of the management style and the things that we're doing are scalable, so that if I guess I'll just leave it at the fact that there would certainly be some things to learn. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Councilmember Sampson?
Okay, I got a follow-up
All right.
on your question about the example of a time when you faced an ethical dilemma. How would you handle it? You never told us, what did you learn from that?
What did I learn from that? Okay, thanks. Over time, it established a proper boundary, right? I learned that it would have been far easier for me to do what was asked of me. And I learned that, making that hard decision, even though it was difficult, was the benefit of our organization, of that individual, and of the relationship that I had then with the council members, because they understood that I was serious about my profession and our ordinances and things like that. Yeah, I guess so. That just because it's hard doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
That's it? I think I shall be now asking you for a closing. And when you do your closing, would you please, you've had a little bit more exposure to all of Clawson since you were here last. In your closure, could you please share maybe something that you've learned about our community since you were here last? Whether it's something you learned from people you spoke with today, or just something you've experienced that you could tell us, that would make you want to be here even more, not just because it's a new opportunity for a job, but give us a good plug, if you don't mind.
Okay.
No pressure.
Yeah.
You'll be rated on it, too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess in closing, I know that leadership and experience are something that you guys are looking for, and I also know that there's not all of my experience is directly applicable to this job. However, I would say that there's a lot there that is very transferable in a way that's more direct than you might think. Even going back to some of my experience in heating and cooling, things of that nature, those problem-solving scenarios where they're extremely technical, when you're following an electrical issue, right? That is a step-by-step process that takes a very specific mindset to be able to accomplish. And I've very much found that when a lot of problems that you're faced with in municipal management can be broken down to those little small step-by-step processes, that you can get a lot further because you're actually looking at the root of the cause and you have dispatched all the other baggage around it. So that would be one way in which that experience is quite beneficial for me here. In learning more about Clawson, as I've said, I grew up in the area. I did not grow up in Clawson, obviously, but I've really come to learn from your residents how much they really enjoy living here. I mean, everybody who's come out tonight and who like I said, reading through your master plan, through your survey respondents, there's a lot of really positive feelings here. I think you have a very apt motto, and all of those reasons are a place to want to serve people who enjoy being somewhere, right? And so those are reasons why I am very excited about being here. And for your big plug, I learned about your community museum in my process here, and got a nice plug from one of the board members this evening. So I would say you go out and check out the Clawson Historical Museum.
Very nicely done. Thank you. We really appreciate your coming in. We appreciate all of your answers and your just agreeable spirit. Thank you so much. That's it for you today.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
I'd like to take a couple minutes to set up the next presentation.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I like them a lot. Our building safety. Are you ready?
Yes, we'll ever be.
We're good? Okay.
Yes.
All right, we are back, and we have before us Mr. Joe Raker. He's our next candidate, and Joe, we're going to start with the formal presentation that you were asked to present. The first question said, please prepare a formal presentation of 3 to 5 minutes. Your presentation should provide an introduction of yourself, why you want to be the next Clawson City Manager, and reasons you believe you will be successful as the next City Manager of Clawson.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to use the same exact presentation that I used for the employees earlier this afternoon. So, good evening. My name is Joe Raker, and I hope to be your next city manager. I have relevant professional municipal experience in the local communities of Mount Clemens, Royal Oak, Detroit, and Harper Woods. In Mount Clemens, I served as an elected school board trustee and then again as an elected city commissioner. Also in Mount Clemens, I served as an appointed official on a review committee charged with reviewing procedures regarding a sensitive neighborhood issue. In Royal Oak, I completed an unpaid and paid graduate level internship under the tutelage of then longtime city manager Don Johnson. In Detroit, I worked as a staff member for city council the year before, the year during, and the year after the bankruptcy. In Harper Woods, I served as their deputy city manager and then as their city manager. Additionally, I'm in my 27th year of combined service in the Navy and Navy Reserves. I'm a graduate of De La Salle High School, Macomb Community College, Eastern Michigan University, and Wayne State. From a family perspective, I'm not married and don't have kids. Both are desired but not required. I am fortunate to have my parents alive, well, and still together. I have 4 sisters, 4 brother-in-laws, 6 nieces, 6 nephews, 2 great nephews, and 1 great niece. They all live in the Detroit metro area, and some number of us usually get together weekly. So I'm fortunate to share that I come from a pretty tight-knit family. Why I want to be the next city manager. City manager opportunities in Southeast Michigan are few and far between. I left active duty to be closer and involved with my family, so I will not move away for a city manager position if I was not willing to do the same for my military service. To keep it simple, this job is in my career field and it is geographically desirable. Reasons why I believe I would be successful as the next city manager of Clawson. I can see there are some strong personalities on the council. I believe that my leadership experience can bring additional decorum and greater order to the day-to-day and in the long term. Additionally, as I mentioned before, I want to stay local, so I will not be shopping around and rubbernecking for the next stepping stone in the city manager arena. I can see myself staying here a long time if I'm moving the community in a positive direction and as long as the council will have me. Last, I'm a pretty simple guy with some pretty simple philosophies and standards for myself and those I lead. 1, do your best, develop yourself and your team. 2, you make a mistake, own it, learn from it, and keep moving forward. 3, timely communication can solve or mitigate just about any issue. 4, everyone comes to work and everyone goes home to their loved ones at the end of every day, meaning everyone's job is valued and we conduct our business to the highest professional and safety standards. 5, do twice as much listening as you do speak. And 6, the golden rule of public administration as far as I'm concerned, everything is important to someone. I wear my lapel pin as a naval officer proudly as a reminder of who I am and what I represent when I'm not in uniform. It's a high standard that I strive to maintain constantly, and with that is my hope to be your next city manager.
The second presentation you were asked to prepare is choose one of the 8 goals from the Clawson Master Plan and develop a 5 to 8 minute presentation addressing the following points. Summarize why you believe this is an important goal for the city of Clawson. Provide a brief evaluation of the objectives included in the master plan under that goal. Would you recommend adding any specific objectives to achieve the goal? And lastly, using your reading of the master plan, professional experience, and any research you may choose to do, provide specific short-term and long-term actions the city should take in order to achieve the stated goal.
Yes, ma'am. So thank you for teeing a lot of that up. I wasn't sure if the people at home or in the audience would have that context. So I'll try and breeze through the first few slides. So as the mayor pointed out, my name is correctly pronounced Raker, and this is presentation 2. So the context of the assignment, as the mayor just pointed out, I will not be repetitive for those of you who are here and listening at home. So my choice was Goal 3, preserve, protect, and enhance the residential character of Clawson's neighborhoods. In the following slides, I will go through the objectives A through D, so I will not read them at this time. Why I believe it is an important goal. All right, this goal focuses on the residents directly, those you represent, and those who we serve. Their neighborhoods and homes are their little piece of heaven and their little piece of the American dream. They are the largest voice, and literally and financially. Little city with a big heart. The residents of the city are its life's blood, with single-family and multifamily dwelling units accounting for approximately 75% of the existing land use. With public discussion across all demographics mentioned in the plan, noted the positive feedback of living in Clawson as a front porch community. I dug a little further and found a 2021 amendment. Within that amendment, they talked about the future housing developments at Schlom and Baker sites, so I thought that was exciting as well. As a little disclaimer, all of these goals, they are important. Some of them had some similarities. 1, 2, and 4 were pretty related, as well as 6, 7, and 8, and arguably 3, 4, and 5. But to answer the mail on the assignment, we're going to talk about only 1, so 3. So, evaluation of the objectives under Goal 3. So, I found that A and D were very similar. So, A, protect neighborhood character while allowing for property improvements. I said this is likely an achieved and should be sustained objective. This could be measured by data collections of various permits and potential resident survey. B, encourage transitional development between single-family residential neighborhoods and commercial corridors. I would suggest that the city be very vigilant on this issue, as zoning changes were proposed for future land use, and that will be demonstrated in the next slide. Encourage streetscape maintenance. I will go into more detail in the following slides. And D, continue to enforce property maintenance code and ensure consistent enforcement. This is, again, likely achieved and should be sustained objective. This could be measured by data collections of various enforcement trends and violations ticketed, pardon me. We also need to be vigilant of the perception of selective enforcement. Okay, so for B, I went a little bit further, and on the left-hand side, you're going to see the existing land use map, and then on the right-hand side is the future land use map. In the northwest corner on the future land use map, I have circled the area of Crooks and Maple and Maine, and then Elmwood and Rochester. So Crooks and Maine, that should probably be some favorable transition, as it's currently in zone industrial, but it's going to change in the future land use to mixed, or it's either mixed or office. It's hard to tell with the color code there. So that should be pretty favorable for the residents. It looks like in the northeast corner there, it looks like it's increased general business, and then where Elmwood and Rochester meet, it looks like it's considerable industrial growth there. So my concern is just being vigilant as far as the residents are concerned for any of those transitions. I have experience with this. I was on in 2008, I was on Mount Clemens feedback from citizens as a school board member as far as the master plan was concerned, and this was a concern of ours. I live close to railroad easement, and the objective that we wanted was to move all industrial on the west side of the railroad track. We thought that would be a great idea to preserve the character of our neighborhoods. It did get into the master plan, however, it fell on deaf ears with future planning commissions and the city council. So I deal with a lot of industrial noise in my residential neighborhood. So I'm exceptionally sensitive about that. Moving on to C. So encourage streetscape maintenance. I found this objective to be exceptionally vague. Councilman Shepherd, please don't take any offense to that. I believe you were a former planning commission member. Nowhere in the 2017 master plan is there a mention of a serious addressment of substantive street repair. However, it includes the Pacer Road Condition Survey map, which illustrates some very serious problems. By review of the 2021 master plan amendment, addressing roads through a capital improvement plan is at least included in the strategy, but there is not an updated Pacer map to the amendment. So on the left-hand side, that shows the Pacer map. On the right-hand side, that shows from 2017. On the right-hand side, it just shows that, hey, it was at least being considered in the 2021 amendment. To dig a little bit further on this one, next slide. On the left-hand side, that's simply just a blow-up of the actual PACER scale and the percentages of your roads that fall into those. What I thought was interesting was that they didn't include the PACER rating scale in the actual master plan. So you had the percentages here, but you had to actually go and find out, all right, what does the PACER rating scale actually mean? So I included it on the right-hand side there. And as you can see, almost all your roads are in fair to poor condition. And I did mention that that was not part of the the PACER rating was not included in the actual scale, was not included in the 2017 master plan. So what are my recommendations? My recommendation is, in addition of a specific objective, would be to add E. Recognize that well-maintained streets and underground utilities contribute to the preservation, protection, and enhancement of the residential character of Clawson neighborhoods. So in the short term, the plan, less than 6 months, obtain an updated PACER road condition survey map, identify, prioritize, and coordinate with utilities, identify, prioritize, and coordinate with utilities road maintenance and repair projects. In the long term, 1 to 2 years to get started and then sustain, consider a special millage ballot initiative dedicated to roads with utility coordination. So on that, I spoke with 5 residents, and the light went off in my head that, hey, I should probably ask these residents what they think of something like that. And so the light went on at the second resident. So I spoke with 4 out of the 5, and all 4 said that they would support a special millage dedicated to roads and infrastructure, as long as they could tell, like, hey, where are things at? Where's the money going to? What's the project? And I believe that can be achieved. So a miscellaneous note, as I was reviewing both the 2017 and the 2020, I was trying to figure out, hey, has any of this stuff been achieved? And I couldn't tell. So I think it'd be good if the city were to develop a progress tracker. I'm a pretty simple person. Progress tracker that looks like a street light, red, yellow, green. Red, it's no movement. Yellow, progress. Green, it's completed. I think that should be done for both the 2017 and the 2021 amendment. I don't know if that was passed by council or not. Keeping it simple, keeping people informed, and letting people understand the progress on these projects and the progress on these master plans, I think, is important for the buy-in of things like a special millage for road and capital utility improvements. Pending your questions, Mayor and Council, that's my presentation.
Very nicely done. So I'm going to go with the first question, which is, have you been a part of anything like this? Anything that would, a road, sewer,
So-
infrastructure, take a large project, or do you have any experience with that? Or, you feel you'd be up and ready to go with something?
I would in Harper Woods, this was also an issue, and I was working hard to move in that direction, and unfortunately, I was recalled to active duty, COVID, and I no longer work there. So we did, our engineering firm there was AEW, a very good rapport with them. They were looking forward, one of the main roads through Harper Woods is Beaconsfield, and so working with them, they were able to identify federal grant money for repaving. We had to do a match. And then also, we were conscientious of the fact that there were some substantive utilities that ran under there, and we were not going to replace the road and then come back, just months or years later and, tear it up to put a sewage line, replace a sewage line. So that has been underway. There was 3 sections. I believe 2 of them one's complete, one's underway, and then next year I believe the project would be complete. So at the initial build-up and startup of that big project, I was a part of it. I extensively socialized the idea of a special millage, but again, I didn't have the time to put it into work.
How was it all funded? You mentioned.
It was going to be a special millage, yes, ma'am.
Right, great, thank you very much. Councilmember.
Okay. Again, thank you for being here.
That's it.
I forgot that piece.
Now you're ready.
Okay, thank you. How would you describe your management and leadership style? Please identify both strengths and weaknesses related to your management and leadership approach.
Strength and weaknesses, leadership approach. Let me make some notes. Okay, strengths. I believe that I'm an approachable person. I believe I'm a cooperative individual. I'm empathetic. I can listen. I believe I'm a team builder. I'm a consensus builder. I think I've shared with you some of my basic leadership philosophies already. As far as weaknesses are concerned, I'm a little bit of a generalist. I mean, I know a little bit about a lot. I can't say that I have, my, whatever it is, IT is a mile deep of knowledge. I don't have a mile deep knowledge in maybe anything. But I have a lot of interests in a lot of things. And so from that, and I have a lot of energy and interest in public administration. So my weaknesses, no one core major skill set, but I compensate that with my energy and motivation.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Anderson?
Well, Clausen has several infrastructure projects that will need to be planned, budgeted for, and completed. Please describe your experience in addressing infrastructure needs and capital improvements plans of a community. You've essentially answered the question pretty much. I guess if I could just add a little bit to it. First of all, question was the plan you had for Harbor Woods, did it ever get implemented with a special mill?
No, to the best of my knowledge, it did not. COVID hit. There was additional social issues that were being dealt with, and also some personnel issues as well. So to the best of my knowledge, I don't think anyone has picked up that mantle and run with it yet.
Okay. So in light of that, it seems to me one of the important things you'll have to do to develop an infrastructure plan is to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
So describe for maybe a strategy for how you would sell an infrastructure plan to the community, since it will most certainly involve some kind of a millage.
So you gotta ask the question. First, build a relationship with people. I met 4 strangers and established a rapport with them, and then obviously they knew I was interested in the well-being of their community, and I asked them about the streets, and I said, hey, I'm actually gonna have a little presentation about it, and I said, on that note, what's your feelings on a potential special millage dedicated specifically towards streets and infrastructure? And for them to have the assurance that this money would be fully dedicated towards those projects, really without any hesitation, they all said yes. There's only 4 people, but I don't think it's a hard sell. People, I'm a firm believer, and I think residents, as long as they see where their tax dollars are going and they see a return on their investment, that they're going to willingly make that investment.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sampson?
Cool. Please describe how you evaluate the performance of the city employees. Please address both the review of the department heads and more broadly, the review of all the staff members.
So in Harper Woods, most of the department heads were contract employees and previous retirees, and they did not have an annual or any type of performance evaluation. It was something that some members of council were interested in, but it didn't go anywhere, and then the rest of the employees were union, and so they didn't have an evaluation program through their union contracts. Unless it was police or fire, where there was parameters within their contract as far as testing is concerned. So from a military perspective, I've written plenty of performance evaluations. I think do you have a performance evaluation system here in Clausen?
Just for city manager and staff heads.
Stacy, you do have it, don't you? Yes, yeah, they do
Okay.
it themselves.
Okay. I'm not familiar with it, but, the application of it being consistent. If there's any midterm review, I think that's important. That way, when you have the actual annual or whatever the periodicity is of the review, that there's no surprises. And I think it's important to have those things just because in the future, if there's any type of recognition or reprimand that needs to be addressed, that you can look in their personnel file and you can potentially show a trend if necessary. So when it comes to writing these evaluations, I would say my name is probably on a couple hundred at least sailors' evaluations. So, and there's 3 different types in the military, from your junior enlisted to your senior enlisted, and then officers.
Okay. I would like to know if you could tell us what you enjoy most about being a city manager, and also what you find most challenging about being a city manager. If you could give me an example of maybe each.
Okay, so most enjoyable, every day is different. You got to be fluid in this job. So I like that kind of variety. You're working with the same team, but the circumstances can change pretty drastically at a moment's notice. So there's a certain level of excitement and anxiety, but there's a lot of satisfaction with it. Most challenging, I would say in this day and age of immediate information disbursement, whether it's accurate or not, I would say that is probably the number one challenge. I mean, people saying things, people being emotional, people not knowing what they're talking about, people having a lot of energy from behind the keyboard, and not having the civic duty and pride to come down here and express their concerns or make their inquiry themselves.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Thank you.
Just will want to remind, make sure the mics are on. Some of you are weak, like your microphone's not on. So if you're-
Mine is on.
Retroactively?
Own it and move on. If I've learned nothing else tonight, it's own it and move on.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, everyone.
All right, I lost my place. Yes. Please share an experience when you applied new technology or a new process. How did the technology or process improve the community you were managing? And if you want to provide an example for both, that'd be great.
Okay, so a new process. I want to reference, just so I accurately reference it off my resume. I'm exceptionally proud of this one from my time in the city of Detroit. So, one second here. Okay, I championed the solution to streamline the city's tax abatement public hearing referral process, which led to a 33% time-saving efficiency for petitioners and fostered a more investor-friendly business environment. So, the council member that I worked for at the time was the chair for Planning and Economic Development, and I was kind of the activity and brains of the entire operation as far as moving his committee forward. I say that humbly, believe it or not. I realized that the back and forth unnecessarily of the referral process did not have any value. It was one of these like, this is what we always do. This is what we always did it. And there were institutions, the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, some council members, and some staff that were just like, yeah, that's the way we always do it. And I said, rationalize to me why you would just simply refer the date from the council to the committee, recognize the date, refer it back to council, and then have the authorization. I said, you've wasted like 3-4 weeks. I said, this is ridiculous. So we finally sat down with the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, chairman at the time, Mr. Art Papanos, and also some distinguished gentlemen from the Legislative Policy Division for City Council, and they said, listen, we've been trying to tell you this, for years. This is something that that can be changed, but the DEGC had been there long-term, and this is the way they always did it, and they weren't willing to change it. And I kept pushing the issue, and I got enough council members to believe there was a legal opinion that it could be done, and it got changed. And from that, it was, greater efficiency, cut that through the red tape, and cut out the nonsense of, hey, this is the way we always did it. So I'm pretty proud of that one. So,
Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
If there is a time when budget cuts must be implemented, please describe the process you would follow to fairly and equitably determine areas of the budget to be reduced.
okay, budget cuts fair and equitably. Oh, there's a huge perception issue there when it comes to things like that. Because again, like I said, the golden rule of public administration, everything is important to someone. So are you going to break some eggs during this process? Absolutely. I might break some eggs right now with my answer. So, I think first and foremost, you have to consider the safety and well-being of the residents. So I don't think you can necessarily spread cuts across public safety or things like DPW, street maintenance and whatnot. There may be some services that are just not as critical to life and sustainment as other ones. And, and I think I would look probably a little bit more critically at those departments before I would start, making impacts to the more critical services of safety and transportation. So is it going to be equitable? Likely not.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sampson.
Okay. Here's the mic. Please give us an example of a time you faced an ethical dilemma. Tell us how you handled it and what you learned from it.
Ethical dilemma. I just told this story earlier today, and it was my time in Navy recruiting. So I was in charge of the enlisted programs, recruiting sailors from all over the state of Michigan, and I was in charge of recruiters that had a lot of autonomy, and I made a decision about one person in particular, and I had the authority to do that. This person violated several rules. They were supposed to ship to go to boot camp. They popped positive on a drug analysis. The Navy changed the grace period from one positive to your opportunity to ship out to boot camp, which is important because we have to man the fleet, and so getting people to boot camp is important. What happened was they changed the policy to 120 days from 90 days, and I told my immediate subordinates, like, this person does not ship until I say so, and do not grandfather them in. They're waiting the whole 120 days. So I ended up, I was supposed to be on travel, and as I'm driving past the Crane Communications building in Detroit, I thought, well, I have time. I'll stop in and see what's going on at work. And when I did, there were certain leaders there, their faces turned white because they're like, uh-oh. The person that I said should not be joining the Navy was actually at the military entrance processing station being put in the Navy. And it got some attention at the higher level. Unfortunately, they let that young lady in the Navy. She didn't seem to learn her lesson because the onus to ship somebody to meet a number was more important than holding a standard. And so from that, basically that was the basis for me to get off active duty because the leadership was not willing to maintain a standard, and ethically the way they handled it, it was, yeah, okay, we'll do what you say. And then as soon as I'm away, It drove a wedge between myself and some immediate subordinates that were key in the recruiting operation. And I remember the master chief of the command brought myself and the chief recruiter into the commanding officer's office and said, hey, you guys got to work this out. I said, we got to work what out? And he said, you two got to get along. I said, we'll get along. I said, well, as far as I'm in charge. I said, I gave a directive, you violated it. And my commanding officer said, you know what, Joey, you frustrate me. And I said, I do? I said, yeah. He said, because you always have the moral high ground. I said, well, why don't we all have the moral high ground? And so that's my ethical story. Sorry it took so long.
That was good. Had the right ending. So, please describe a situation you've handled where the community faced a contentious issue with strong, diverging opinions, and what did you learn from this experience?
Sure. I will share with you when I was appointed in Mount Clemens, I was appointed to the Historic District Review. What happened in Mount Clemens was someone had a good idea that, hey, we're going to establish a historic district. And within that establishment, there were some very harsh operational requirements as far as like pulling a permit, the cost to pull a permit, and then there was a lot of like really heavy-handed oversight to where people just didn't have the means to do ordinary maintenance to their house. It was very intrusive, and it created a lot of problems. It turns out the majority of the people in the district really didn't want it. The administration, so what the administration did, there was a lot of outcry. They said, hey, we'll develop a citizens review board, and there were 6 of us. I was elected to be the chairperson, and from that we took about 14 months and we reviewed the whole process of establishing the historic district. And so it polarized people on that street. It polarized people within the community as far as those that were pro-historic district, those who weren't, pro-historic district. And it was important that we got down to the actual facts of the matter. And through our final report, we were able to prove that the district was established pursuant to effective procedures. And from that, over time, the community was able to put it behind themselves.
That's good. Thank you. Councilmember Shepherd.
Thank you. Please describe how you would encourage all members of the public, regardless of background, viewpoints, and experiences, to participate in city government.
I love this one. I just was talking to, I think it was Ben from Canadian National over there about this. So I think we have to make it simple for people to understand. That's why I'm like, hey, let's just have a progress tracker. Red, yellow, red, yellow, green. We'll throw some orange in there. That'll make things another gradient. But make it simple for people to understand what is going on in government, what is going on with their tax dollars, and how they can be part of the process. I think that is the easiest way. And then also I think, and I'll get on my soapbox about education and public administration as far as, getting people, Councilmember Shepherd, right after my own heart with that comment about the scouts. If it'd been nice if they would stay here and watch what we do, make decisions. That was probably as equally important should they have stayed in that. And so I thought that was fantastic. And those are the things I think we're lacking both in public and parochial schools is people just do not understand the what it takes to run government. I mean, people say freedom isn't free. Absolutely not. I also say good government comes with a price, and people need to understand where their money goes when they pay that price. And if they understand that, I think things will be much more harmonious. So that's how I would encourage all members of the public to get more involved.
Thank you.
How are we doing?
You can go to your next one.
Councilmember Anderson.
I understand that you were called to active duty for the COVID outbreak, and I think you had to be deployed as about a year or so.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That apparently led to some issues with your employer. I think you're currently a reservist at this point, right? How long do you anticipate being a reservist?
Well, I am in a interesting situation where I just was promoted back in September, so I need to do 3 years to retire as a 06, a captain. However, I have a lot more runway in my career, so I could stick around up until I can go another 10 years. So it kind of depends. My intention would be to, and there's other variables in there as well. I mean, I'm a senior officer now. My opportunities to continue to serve become more limited as time goes by. But one thing that I do and would continue to probably do up until I'm forced to retire is I do funeral honors. And so funeral honors for any military member, when they pass, funeral honors are an entitlement that everyone receives. And so that's one of the missions of the Navy Reserve. And so I probably will continue to do that until, to varying levels of participation. If I get this job, I obviously can't do it that often, but I would continue to do that. So it's unpredictable. I definitely have another 3 years, but my intention is to go beyond that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Sampson,
No, I don't have any more questions at this time.
how about you? No. Mr. Shepherd, no? Then, I would like to know, after you've spoken with our employees and a group of our residents today, is there something that you've learned about our community that you didn't know before that makes you any more interested or
Sure.
happy to be here? And then I'd like you to give us a little plug at the end. And you may also give your closing statements.
Okay, so coming in and after watching a lot of the meeting minutes at 1.5 speed, I was very happy to see that the council came to some consensus on the millage, the ballot initiative. So that was, I thought, a great consensus building effort on behalf of everyone. So I thought that was great. Coming in and speaking with your employees, I had some concerns about morale. I had some concerns about, so I asked them about morale, and the consensus was we're starting to pull up. I asked everybody, give me a challenge for your department, and staffing, training, but by and large, moving in a positive direction, they felt. So that was very encouraging. And I think Chief's done a fantastic job under extenuating circumstances to build a team that, from my limited observations, has some level of cohesion. So I thought that was very encouraging. So, and for me to give you a plug, I mean, I'm not so, I'm much more, I don't know how to give you a plug. I mean, as far as, are you looking for me to come up with something equivalent to, a front porch community, or?
No, and you can't top the little city with the big heart.
I wasn't sure. I'm like, I got to come up with something. My marketing skills.
We're sticking with that one. I was just curious if you met someone on the street and they said something about Clawson. What would you say about Clawson that you maybe wouldn't have said before?
That it has great potential to continue to sustain sustain its reputation and just continue to improve. I think it would be for anybody. Ben was just telling me he just moved here a few years ago, and so it was encouraging that he's getting involved in the community. And so for him to stay here, it would be great for him to stay here. He's got told me some of his life's milestones that are on the horizon, and so it'd be great if he stayed here in Clawson, to raise a family and to work through his career. That's what makes a community. So
Absolutely. So, final words for us.
So, it turns out I actually know Mr. Justin. Al, and then maybe that's where you're getting the L from. I will not say his name correctly, but we were in class together at Wayne State University as well. I can't say I know him as well as I know Wayne, but I think that the good news for the community is if you make a decision in the near future on any three of us, I think you are in good hands. So.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming
Thank you
in
for
this
having me.
evening.
It's been a
Appreciate you
very
much.
enjoyable experience.
Thank you. So we will take another short break, and then we will resume with our last candidate, Mr. O'Neill. And we have with us Mr. Wayne O'Neill. Wayne, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to what you have to share with us. And we're going to start with the first questions that everyone was asked. So everyone was asked to prepare a formal presentation. And I'm not sure if you're rolling yours into one, or I'll ask you the questions the way they were given to us, and you can address them however you choose. It says, please prepare a formal presentation of 3 to 5 minutes. Your presentation should provide an introduction of yourself, why you want to be the next Clawson City Manager, and reasons you believe you will be successful as the next City Manager of Clawson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, for having me here. I did make a presentation, and I think that if you would allow me, I will dovetail it all into one
Perfect.
and cover all the things that you brought up. Also, if you'd like, there was 2 presentations. One that had to deal with the master plan. I can segue right into that if you'd like.
Sure. Whatever you're comfortable with, we are your audience.
Because some of the things, they run together because I've been here before.
Right.
Okay. As you said, I prepared 2 presentations for this evening. I'm going to introduce myself and do a little bit of background, and that way we'll have the foundation to go into why I think I'll be good at being your city manager. First of all, I've been a city manager since 1982. Before my first appointment, I worked with the city of Southfield, Michigan. I think we all know where that is. My first position was in the building department as a code enforcement officer, and my primary responsibility was enforcing the zoning ordinance and the property maintenance code. I was promoted to administrative assistant in the building department, and I issued certificates of occupancy for all new construction and change of uses. I was involved with the Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and show cause hearings for demolition of substandard dwellings. My next appointment was Senior Administrative Assistant, and I was assigned to the Senior Director of Public Services. The departments in this division included the Department of Public Works, Water and Sewer, Motor Pool, Streets and Highways, and Sanitation. What happened was Pete Cristiano was the city administrator at the time. He changed his organization into, he had 4 senior directors that worked as assistant city managers. I was fortunate enough to have worked for, actually I worked for 3 of them. But the third one, I worked for him when he was the head of the building department, and he became a senior director of staff services. The next assignment was senior director of public safety, where we were responsible for police, fire, and civil defense. I assisted with the development of the annual budget for not only the divisions, but for all of the departments within those divisions. The positions I held within the city of Southfield gave me a solid foundation for my future positions. I will tell you that I mentor people coming out of college, what have you. I try to get them to enter this business within the building and planning area. It gives you tremendous building blocks and how cities function, how they develop, how their zoning keeps everything straight, how their taxable base comes about. You know, and a lot of my fellow managers started in the manager's office as an intern, and it's a great learning place. But to get to the nuts and bolts is when you're down at the department head level. Moving on, I have worked as a city manager in cities of 3,000 to 20,000 population, and as a county administrator with a county that was 640 square miles. These positions have afforded me the ability to make judgments and comparisons as to best practices and what not to do, which is very important. You learn from your mistakes. Within most of these communities that I have served, I was involved with master plans, capital improvement programs, downtown developments, community development. I acted as a chief labor negotiator, personnel director, DDA executive director, and a city clerk, as well as sweeping the floor. In 2 of my last communities, we were involved with the Michigan Municipal League's statewide competition for Best of the Best or Race for the Cup, for project innovation. In Emily City, we won the Region 4 competition for our SEED group, which stands for Supporting Entrepreneurs and Economic Development. In the city of Fraser, we won the whole statewide competition for the Race for the Cup, and I believe it was either 2018 or 19, because our picture came out on the Michigan Municipal magazine, and I think it was January of 19. I'm not sure, but anyway, for the McKinley Cup Park barrier-free park for kids with learning disabilities and what have you. Recently, I was recognized by the American Society for Public Administration Detroit Metro Chapter in the 2020 Outstanding Public Service Award category as the elective official, the highest elected official. That was a total surprise to me. As with everyone else in this world, I was in this pandemic and was Fraser's emergency coordinator for the COVID-19 pandemic, which started in March of 2020. Now, as I say that, I want to preface that by saying that we have an emergency management coordinator, which is our public safety director. But as the chief executive officer, I had emergency management authority to hire, fire, spend money, do whatever we had to do, and we worked very, very closely together with that. I'm keenly aware of what incident command is and what my job is. My job is to stay in the back room and write checks. I don't get out there on the front lines. That's not what I do. Two very important events in Fraser when I got there was a sinkhole that opened up on 15 Mile and Hayes. It was the size of a football field and 60 feet deep. Now, this happened a week before I started. I started on, I believe it was July the 2nd, and this started the day after Christmas. So that's what I walked into. Now, I keep in mind it was the responsibility of Macomb County, the Mid-Interceptor District. But it affected Fraser's residents. We had houses falling into it, and so we were very keenly aware of the situation. We worked hand in glove with the Macomb County Drain Commission and whomever we had to remedy the situation. The other was a couple of months into my tenure with the Fraser that involved the sexual harassment charges against the mayor and a council person. These two were removed from council by the remainder of the council. And the charter in Fraser has the same verbiage that the governor has for removing elected officials. And they had a tribunal with the judge and everything, and they removed them from office. When I got to Fraser, there was a $2 million structural deficit in the general fund. We corrected this with a combination of cuts in public safety, outsourcing dispatch services, and increasing revenues with a $9 million Public Act 33 levy passed by the City Council. For those of you that Public Act 33, for communities that are 15,000 or less, you can levy 100% of your police and fire costs against the public. And it does not take a vote of the people to do that. Why do I want to be your next city manager? As you know, I was Clawson city manager for nearly 15 years in the 80s and the 90s. It was the best place I've worked as a city manager, and I mean that. I will work with the mayor and council and staff to move Clawson forward as a unit working together as a single group. We have to be one. We have to be one cog moving forward and be a perfect machine like a sewing machine. This is where we dovetail into the last two items. In 1986, I started in a new position. We started the upgrade of the master plan. It hadn't been upgraded in many years. I believe we updated it at least one, if not two more times prior to 1999. I called Phil McKenna and John Jackson, who took over for Phil McKenna, and their recollection, they think we did it at least two more times before 1999. Around the same time, we activated the DDA, and I was the first DDA director. We were successful in obtaining an intermodal transportation grant of $1 million to completely remake the downtown area. We removed everything from building facade to building facade, the street, the trees, pavers, put everything in brand new. We established the boundaries of the DDA and established a base year for the tax capture, which is the Tax Increment Finance Authority. That's how the DDA gets its money, as you know. I was secretary of the Planning Commission and a voting member for almost 15 years here in Clawson. I was extremely active in the community, and I'm the past president of the Lions Club, was voted Lion of the Year. I'm a charter member of the Rotary Club and a Paul Harris Fellow, which is the highest honor they award. I ran the Lions Club annual golf outing, which raised approximately $5,000 per year, and I did that for about 12 years. I will hit the ground running with very little learning curve. I hired Stacy Hodges as a high school intern in the Treasury Department. I hired Scott Saravello as a patrolman. And had I stayed, and I told Scott this, had I stayed, I would have promoted him to chief as well as his predecessor. Two excellent individuals. The next deals with the master plan. This actually feeds off what I just told you. Now, this is what I told your department heads today, and I want to make sure you know this. I do not like people that are parochial. I, mine, me. I don't like that. I have to do that here. So you won't hear that again after today. I just don't like it. We're a group, but I have to do this here because I'm trying to sell myself to you guys. So it's a choose a goal from the master plan and summarize why it is important, provide an evaluation of the objectives, and provide any specific short-term and long-term actions the city should take in order to achieve the stated goals. I discussed this today with John Jackson, who was the president of McKenna. He bought Phil McKenna out. You could write a master's thesis on these questions. A master's thesis. And I'm not going to bore you to death. I'm going to touch on my experience with your master plan and the goal that I've took out of your master plan, if that's okay, because we'll all go to sleep. All right. Let me begin by indicating that while I was Clawson City Manager, I was secretary and a voting member of the Planning Commission. I brought Phil McKenna to Clawson as the planner of record in 1986. We completed the first revision of the master plan in the late 80s and at least one or two more times in the 90s. The technical requirements for having a DDA were completed in 1977. That's when they passed the law that you could have a DDA. But nothing further took place. I got here in 85, and we activated the DDA. I put in here in the 80s. I think it was the late 80s that we did that, but it might have creeped into 90. I was buried when I got here. I had to do a capital improvement program, your master plan, all kinds of stuff, and then we finally got to the DDA portion of it. We activated the DDA and set the borders that you have to do, because your borders weren't even set yet. So we set the borders. When you set the borders, you have your base year for your SEV and how you get your tax capture from your yearly increases, from your growth, and also from new construction. I reviewed the current and future land use maps and see that you have a new zoning districts for the core downtown and adjoining downtown. Bordering this, you have the core residential that squares off the 14-mile road corridor and other areas. These are transitional zoning districts that are created as a buffer to the residential neighborhoods. When I was city manager, builders would come in with plans, development plans, and that I would look at and I would see and think to myself, you want to put a 4 or 5, 6-story building, increase the density, and do this stuff right next to some of our residential properties, they're going to scream when they get 2-story, just like you got over by the main inn. That's a beautiful thing. And I've talked to residents. People come to my house and they ask me about the zoning when they get the notices, and I tell them, 2 stories isn't bad. It's not bad at all. You're you're right next to a transitional area. You're fine. It's all good because you're going to increase your SEV in town. You're going to increase the values of your property. When the water rises, all boats rise. So I tell them that. So A, which is under, I believe, number 3, protect the neighborhood character while allowing for property improvements. So with that, don't allow for encroachments into the residential through the ZBA and sound planning practices. You want to make sure that the members of your zoning board of appeals stick as strictly as they can to the zoning ordinance, where it makes sense, where there's an unreasonable hardship, not a hardship that they created for themselves, but where there are a hardship for the topography of the land or whatever falls under the State Planning Act. You work with them. But when it comes to them wanting to increase the footprint of their buildings or whatever that is going to encroach on the character of the neighborhood, you want to be very, very careful with that. And you can use those tools in your toolbox to make sure that doesn't have. Make sure you have enforcement guidelines in your zoning ordinance for colors that can be used, so they're not painting some god-awful color. And other architectural guidelines. You might work with SHPO, with the state historical. Make sure that you're not going to take down Mary's house that was found, that homesteaded this place. So you got to watch all these things. You got to be careful with these things. And if you have an idea that you're going to maintain strict zoning limits on density and lot coverage and setbacks, that part will take care of itself. And that'll dovetail into one of the very last thing that I can't wait to get to, which is D, but we'll get to B first. Encourage transitional development between single-family residential neighborhoods and commercial corridors. You just had something on the ballot that's a perfect example, and that's the marijuana. One of the things, you got to be careful with your zoning. You can't zone something out of existence if it's legal. So you have to have a zoning for it. And having it in an industrial zone makes a lot of sense. But you can also, within your zoning, make sure you place things under the special use aspect of it so that they have to come to the planning commission and maybe ultimately the city council, depending on what it is and where it is, that if they are going to have it in that district, you're not going to cause problems with your close residential district, and under the special use permit, it'd be enclosed within a building, completely enclosed within a building. So these are things you got to think about when you do these things. Your planner should be on the forefront. When these things start to rise up, medical marijuana and grow houses and all those things, your planner should be on the front edge to make sure you've got those ordinances and things in place so that you have the tools in your toolbox that you can control them to the extent that you can control them. Okay? You should have a resident, when somebody's renting a house, you should have a rental housing ordinance. That's something the state's given you authority to do a long time ago. These are the things, some of the things that you can do to maintain your neighborhoods. And again, your planner should be on the forefront of that. Now, where does your city manager come in? What's he or she's background? What do they know? Just saying. All right. Special use permit. C, encourage streetscape maintenance. All right. There's not a heck of a lot you can do in the residential area for streetscape. You own between the sidewalk and the curb. You own 1 foot, typically, towards the house side of the sidewalk. That is called the right-of-way. You can control that, okay? You can control that. One of the issues that always comes up are the types of trees that can be placed within a right-of-way. You will want to limit the trees to those that will not grow into the overhead wires. they become dangerous, and Edison's going to come along and chop them to bits anyway, and they look terrible. So you get Bradford pears, or you get something that doesn't grow completely out of it. And you should have a community forest plan for the replacement of street trees and trees within your parks. So that somebody says, well, my tree is dead. I've heard that forever. My tree is dead. You go out there, what's all these leaves on there? I don't know. You know, they don't like the tree. They want the tree out there. Well, Clawson is known for their streetscapes and their street trees and what have you. I remember when we redid Broadacre over here, and the person that was the building official at the time, who he left shortly thereafter, because they're going to take down all those trees over there. There's no thoughtfulness. And the neighbors are complaining, and I said, well, why don't you move the road over a foot? I mean, can you think? We didn't take the trees down, okay? And he left. So you have to watch for that. The other thing is rock gardens with boulders, and people like to put these boulders in their front yard. No. Because especially when we're doing plowing, we have enough trouble with mailboxes and such. You know, put that stuff in there, and people, some make a tight turn. And I've seen where the cars are right up on the boulders, and they turn sideways. I'm like, really? You know, thanks for having me come over. But you're limited. You're limited in some of the things you can do. Now, you don't want to get involved with your forestry program about trees on private property. Don't even go there. Don't even go there. You're going to tell people what they're going to plant. Good luck with that. Number D, continue to enforce the property maintenance code and ensure consistent enforcement. I can tell by this being in the zoning, in the master plan, that there has been an issue somewhere along the way that somebody felt as though people were getting off scot-free, or what, the good old boy, or whatever you want to talk about. Having been a code enforcement officer, you gotta treat everybody the same. Because if you don't, you're going to lose your effectiveness, and they're going to start pointing. But look what you did for Glenn, and look what you did here, and what you didn't do. What about this person? Okay. Property maintenance through consistent code enforcement is key to maintaining the value of our housing stock. That keeps the SEVs up. You don't let them park on a front lawn. You know, put a paid parking space in. Now, we all know that the cities in the southeastern Michigan are tight for parking. And we see them park. And we've got 2 to 6, which is great. That's great. It's great for police enforcement, whatever. But you see them park. They're on the sidewalk. That's okay. But you don't see them parking on the lawn in Clawson. You don't see that. Why? Because we have community standards. And you enforce the property maintenance code. You maintain property standards. And we're good to go on that. Everyone benefits from maintained neighborhoods. We also need to enforce the building codes as part of the overall maintenance of the structures. When your code enforcement officer is out taking a look, you can see where the fascia board is coming off and the gutters are coming off, and you just don't look for junk cars and stuff. You can see that stuff and tell the building official, point it out. You know, you see somebody bootlegging in an electrical system or whatever they're doing. It's to their advantage to take a permit if they don't know it. And the other thing is that I tell them all the time, people will come in to take a permit out to do something to their home. I've always said to, so you're going to put a roof on your house, huh? You're 170 and you're going to put a roof on your house. Are you taking a permit out for a person that you contracted out with that's going to put a roof on? Yeah. Let the person take the permit out. I'll tell you what the permit fee is. Because we can't go after his license if you take out the permit. So I try to protect the homeowner, the property owner. They don't know. I've always told my building officials, if the resident comes in with it on a paper bag or a paper plate, take it. Help them with it. Help them with it. Now, commercial, you're required to have sealed plans by an architect. That's another story altogether. But you need to help John Q. Citizen. They don't know. They don't even want to come up here. First of all, a lot of them don't even want to come up here. They go, oh my God, they're going to take me away or whatever. And, you know, I like that when they come up because I'll usher them through it. I personally usher them through. Okay? My door, my office door is always open. Equal enforcement is a must if we, as I said, if we give the impression that it's not enforced for everyone, you lose your ability to be effective. This is where I went on the paper bag. Your code book needs to be enforced, but it should have a soft cover on it. You have to have common sense. If you got a problem with an area of the code, we can fix it through amendments. Okay? Because if you consistently have a problem, and the Zoning Board of Appeals is a perfect place. And Glenn, you know this from being on the Planning Commission for years. Well, they got to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. If you have to keep going to the Zoning Board of Appeals, it's something that the Zoning Board of Appeals is allowing, you got a problem with your ordinance. Your ordinance is too strict. You might have your parking standards are too high from before with the size of the cars and all those other things. And we've all seen the outlots being developed. There used to be 1 to 150 for commercial properties. You don't need that many cars anymore. On the flip side of that, one of the problems that we have in Clawson and a lot of the communities in southeastern Michigan, when the downtowns and the major corridors were developed, there's 1 car per house. There's no parking. A lot of it was in the back because we don't trust you, so he wants you to go around back. And so all those things have morphed their way in. I have experience with Southfield when it was growing back in the 80s, 70s and 80s. And I can tell you there are things that I wouldn't do now that they did then with reference to strip centers and what have you. And you want to do like they do in Florida where they've got one continuous driveway once you get off the street and don't have all those curb cuts. And you can go from one business to the next. And it works out. It works out because they feed off each other instead of having, well, let me go out here. Now, those of us that have been in Clawson for a long time, we never take 14 Mile in Rochester. We take the back way because we know how to sneak around. So just like I got to work today, or got here today, I caught the light, so it took me 2 minutes. So that's my soliloquy for what you asked for on the master plan and my background.
So my first question will be off of what you just said. Clearly, you've been doing this for a little while, and you clearly have enjoyed many facets of what you do. Tell me what you enjoy most about being a city manager, and then also what you find most challenging.
Let me start with the second one. The challenging is the city council. That's the most challenging. Well, it is, because you have got to get the city council to agree on policy. Because my job is to take your policy to your budget document or whatever and take it to the organization and implement that policy. Okay? That's an issue. That can be an issue. Also, conversely, for we staff to make sure that you have the proper completed staff work to execute, to develop a policy that makes sense. So it's a two-way street. That's why I say we have to be a group. My favorite part of being a city manager is the people aspect of it. The city council, the dynamic, the department heads with their myriad of experiences, okay? John Q. Public and the different publics that come before the city. And every day is a new day in this business. It never ceases to amaze me. The stuff that will come up, they go, you gotta be kidding me. Really? That's a new one. And so that's the fun part. And I feel that I'm a people person. I encourage my staff to come to me whenever they want. We had kind of a mini staff meeting today, which I found delightful. I can't wait to get back and do that. It's great. I wanted to impart on the staff that just with the same things I'm telling you. Matter of fact, they got this. I got to practice today on this. And to let them know that we need to operate as a cohesive group. And that, I'm there as a expert in areas that I may know something on, but also that when they have a problem, that they bring me 3 solutions and tell me which solution is the best and why. Because I'm not going to micromanage them. They don't like to be micromanaged, and I don't like to be micromanaged. And they'll work for us if we don't do that. So that's the kind of the long and the short of it.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Shepherd.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My question is, how would you describe your management and leadership style? Please identify both strengths and weaknesses related to your management and leadership approach.
I have a participatory management style. I bring everybody into it. I got a bunch of experts that work for me. What do I know? And then we get to it. We try to get to the bottom of it. That's how we get to the bottom of it. Again, I have an open door. My staff is not afraid to come to me with a problem, because if I don't have the answer, I have a network of people I can call to help get the answer. And Mr. Shepherd, would you expound a little bit more on the second part of your question, please?
It's what are the challenges?
Oh, yeah.
Or weaknesses, I should say.
Oh, weaknesses. Weaknesses I got. I mean, every time I think I know something, and that's what I talked about in my last question. Every time I think I know something, I lift up the corner of a page and there's a whole new universe. A whole new universe. And that's what's fun about this business, and because of that. Now, let me tell you the part I don't like about this business as well. We are regulated to death by the state, by the Fed. We can't do 1/10 of the stuff that you can do in the private sector, or the private sector. We can't do it here. You just can't. Because of laws and unfunded mandates and all the different things that come down or promulgated through the state and the federal governments. That's why I always say I err on the side of the employees, because you're going to wind up in court. You're going to wind up in court. You got to be very, very judicious and careful. I don't walk around touching people. And you just, which I hated, because, people like to be touched. But you don't. You just make sure you go there and say hello. I go out of my office every day and stage the tech, go to the Treasurer's Department, go to the police department, go everywhere. Got to. Go back to the DPW, bring coffee with me, donuts. Come on. So, but my weaknesses are I got a lot to learn.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Clausen has several infrastructure projects that will need to be planned, budgeted for, and completed. Please describe your experience in addressing infrastructure needs and capital improvement plans of a community.
All right, well, I believe I developed the first capital improvement program in Clausen back in '85, and I had a 5-year rolling capital improvement program, and every year I would add the 5th year. And under a capital improvement program, the first year is the only year that matters, basically. That's what you're doing. You try to budget for that, and then you go forward. And the way you do that is you come up with projects that need to be done, both infrastructure, building projects, replacement of expensive equipment, what have you. Now, when you have budget constraints, like in the general fund, you put your budget together, and if you see if both ends will wave at each other, much less meet, there's money left over, then you can throw those monies, because general fund money can be used anywhere. And you can use that for capital improvement. Now, let's move over into the various departments. In the water and sewer department, you can use SRF funds, state revolving fund dollars. And I believe they're either 1% you have to get it funded, and you make your application, and I think it takes 2 or 3 years to get going, but you can borrow money and you pay it through revenue bonds from your water sewer commodity rates. And you can also get general obligation bonds. You can do those too, but you have to have the money to pay them back. So if you don't have money to pay them back, well, then that's not going to work. But typically it's revenue bonds, because with your enterprise funds, which is water and sewer, they require you, the bonding agencies require you to establish a commodity rate that will ensure the replacement of that. Now, they will take a look at your Standard & Poor's ratings and make sure that how good those are, and the higher your rating is, the better your rating is, the lower your rates are going to be. I've been involved in a couple of communities where I got there, in Emily City for one, I refinanced their water bonds because we had done such a good job at it. I put them in a private placement, and I saved the city, I think, about $170,000, and just by private placement. But I've been involved with that type of a thing. Roads, there's a tricky thing when you're doing these infrastructure projects, because if you're going to do a road, underneath the road, that's your water and sewer, and if that's messed up, you don't replace the road. And now I got this line that's got to be replaced. So there's a lot of coordination. And you take a look for grants. There are grants, monies that you can get through state highway, depending on if you get new development that creates jobs, and you can get monies that way. And there's several different ways. And so you look for all those things, and your engineers should be helping you with that. Okay, your engineer you should have an engineer that, you can't afford to have an engineer on staff. So you have AEW, I know that, and they're very, very good. I've had them in other communities, they're good people. And they will help coordinate different monies, and they will tell you, you got monies, and if you work closely with them, they'll help you with your capital. I know they did that in Fraser, and they had that going on for years and years before I got there. I'm taking any credit for that. But I've been familiar with infrastructure. Matter of fact, one of the first things I did here was a complete replacement of your water meters, state-of-the-art rock wells, touch pads. And I did that back, that would have been the late 80s, I think, when we did that.
Okay, thank you.
Please describe how you evaluate the performance of the city employees. Please address both your review of the department heads and, more broadly, the review of the staff members.
Well, everywhere I've been, I've done annual reviews for my department heads. When you get below that, especially if they're unionized, you can do them, but for the lower level staff, but you're wasting your time, quite frankly. But for department heads, what I do is I have them give me a listing of their goals and objectives for the next year. And that, when I say the next year, starting July 1st, a lot of those should be predicated and based on items that have come before them, either from the general public, or from the city council, or whatever. So how are you going to accomplish these things? What are you going to accomplish? And make sure your goals and objectives are reasonable. But don't make them so reasonable that you didn't do anything. So, there's a balance there. Now, I've got to stick up for my employees, because a lot of the things that employees will want to do cost money. And if you don't have any, they can't effectuate stuff. So all they can do is be really good to the public and what have you. But I want my department heads to put their thinking caps on as to what they want to accomplish, both in the short term and the long term. That's why you have a 5-year capital program, and they have it revolving. And their goals and objectives should be part and parcel to your capital program. And if you're more inside, like Stacy, have you collect more tax bills? She's very limited in what she can do, but what she can do is be is nicer to the public or whatever. So you got to be careful that you can't hold one to the same level as the police chief. That and you don't want him to tell his guys that they got a quota either on tickets. So again, I always have them do that. I review that with them. I also review that with them about every 3 months to see how they are doing on their goals and objectives. And then I rate them on what they've accomplished. And then we go on and dovetail into the next year.
Thank you.
Okay. We're okay. Please share an experience when you applied new technology or a new process. How did the new technology or process improve the community you were managing?
I would say here in Clawson, BSNA, when I got here, we didn't have anything but a full board calculator, right, Stacy? And then what was that machine she had in the back? She did I don't know what that was that she had in the back room over here where Pollock sits now. But we did an internal needs study and completely computerized the city of Clawson. And of course, you've morphed and got more modules to BSNA. And back then, BSNA was only doing some things in Treasury, right? And then we got with them and said, look, you've got great stuff. What can you do for our water department? What can you do here? What can you do there? Because we had to buy custom software. So now BSNA's now got all the modules for all the different departments. And I've since places I've been is instituted those modules. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of cities that still don't have all the modules. And they're wonderful. And I know Mr. Sampson was talking about having a kiosk out there. Well, I believe there is a kiosk out there for builders to come in and get a building permit. The only problem is that if you're closed, they can still do that. But they can do it online. If you have them, they can access you online through your website. And then, of course, paying by credit card or what have you, those types of things. I've done all those things in various cities that I've been in.
Thank you. Councilmember Shepherd.
Okay. If there is a time when budget cuts must be implemented, please describe the process you would follow to fairly and equitably determine areas of the budget to be reduced.
Right. That's a great question. Since around 2006, when everything collapsed, and then I had the problem, I was in this business in the recession before that as well. I'm dating myself. We got cut back management. Hasn't been a lot of fun. Not a lot of money to do a lot of things. All right. When I have the department heads do their budgets, I said, I want you to do the budget with the funds and the tools you need to do your job. Don't spare a dime. What will it take to do your job? All right. Now, I want you to tell me what your budget looks like with a 2%, 4%, 6%, and 8% cut. I have them submit that with the budget. Here, cut. Because you're the ones who got to make the cut. We can't decide that. You decide that. That's a policy decision. So it's very interesting because in a lot of the departments, I mean, Stacy hasn't got a dime in her department to cut. I know that. I can tell you it's the same in all the cities. And you say, well, give me 4%. Well, here's my keys. You know? And you get to the point where you can't cut yourself to a balanced budget. But I think it's important that the mayor and the council, the residents for transparency, see that there's no fat in these budgets. Now, if there's capital items that individuals have in their departments, that's another story. Because obviously, if we get to the point we've got to cut it, goodbye, that's gone. That comes complete. That's easy to look at. 95% of city budgets are made up of people costs and legacy costs. And now the legacy costs are surpassing the people cost because of the cost of the pensions and healthcare, retiree healthcare. It's, I've seen it all change, and it's, so nobody likes to raise taxes, but you need to know where you can go if you need a revenue source. That's a tool in your toolbox. You made a decision at the last council meeting to go for 8 years for 4.1 or 3.5, whatever it was. That's a policy decision. You did that. Is there other places that you can look? I mentioned Public Act 33, Police and Fire Act, where you can levy. Residents want their services. How can we provide the services? I always tell people, we don't make widgets here. We're not a business in the terms where we make a profit. We're a nonprofit. Your building department better not have fee schedules that make it where they make more than their annual cost to do business with some overhead over the top, because the state law won't allow that. When I was in Southfield, we were back in the 70s, we were making millions of dollars in the building department, and that's when the builders started filing lawsuits about, you're gouging us. And we couldn't do that anymore. So keeping in mind that you have fees that you can get, and there's other things that you can get, but you're restricted. And those monies raised in the building department should only be spent on building department costs outside a little overhead for administration, lights, and what have you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Please describe a situation you've handled where the community faced a contentious issue with strong diverging opinions, and what did you learn from this experience?
Well, the latest one was in Fraser with Public Act 33. We had a divided council, and it was a 4-3 board, and you needed 5 votes for the budget, and you needed 5 votes to put something on the ballot. And they did not want to levy the PA 33 themselves, knowing full well they needed the monies. And they put it to a vote of the people. And when they put it to the vote of the people, you had members of the council, not being part of the over group, talking it down and inviting outside forces to come in that are anti-tax. They were putting out these very, very expensive brochures that the city can't do, because you can't do that. We can't spend money on a tax proposal. You can talk about it. We can't spend any money on it. And it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. So finally we had a change in the council. One part predicated by the removal of 2 individuals. And the very next election, we got a 6-1 board. And they voted to not only levy the PA 33, they levied 9 mills, which was $4.5 million. And 2 of the council people said these people that got elected ran on the basis that you elect me, I'll levy 15 mills. It takes it. And they were swept in. So what I learned is that if you present your information properly and you have people pulling in the same direction, you will succeed. You will succeed. And I've been involved in I believe it was 7.5 mills in East Point, that one person on the council was against it. He's up for re-election, and he didn't get voted back in. And I think it passed with 80% of the vote. And I think they still got the same millage, and then they made a fire authority so they could get more millage to run the city. And we had PA 33 in E-course. you know, sometimes you have to do what you have to do, but you've got to provide the residents, because they're going to pay. We all pay a lot of taxes. I don't care what city you're in. We all pay a lot of taxes. Are you going to pay a lot of taxes and get no services? Or are you going to pay a lot of taxes and get services and keep the value of your property up? So that's my take on that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sampson?
We got more time for another? Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Give us an example of a time you faced an ethical dilemma, how you handled it, and what you learned from it.
Oh. Me personally, or just with an organization?
Yeah, or you. So please give an example of the time you faced an ethical dilemma, how you handled it, and what you learned from it.
Well, Fraser is the nearest one, the ethical dilemma with what was going on with the elected officials. And in my perspective, prior to me getting there and using the city hall as a clubhouse and just coming and going and anywhere you wanted to go. And, you know, that's what caused that sexual harassment, because they thought they had free reign. And I'll tell you what I learned from it. I learned that you do the right thing. And the right thing was I told them not to come to City Hall anymore. And if they need to come to City Hall, they come for the council meeting or make an appointment. I mean, yeah, when you start operating outside your lane, that's when you're asking for trouble. And we all know what our lane is. I've never taken a postage stamp. Nothing. That's not to say I didn't wind up with a pin from somebody. This was just LS&L planning. I don't know. You know, you wind up with a pin or something once in a while, but, you know, or some yellow dog or something like that, but no. No, I'm a member of the ICMA, and we have a code of ethics that's very, very strict. And as I said before, we all know each other. If you use it like the guy that was in Troy, Kasenik or whatever his name, he'll never work again. Why would you do something like that? I mean, I've often told people I have my price, okay? And people look at me. I say, yeah, my price is so high, I can't deliver anything to get that price, so I guess I'm safe. I mean, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I mean, I've caught people stealing, and I'm like, dude, really? Gas? Come on. You need some money? I'll give you some money. You don't have to give it back. Give it to the next guy. But don't steal, you know. So you find up stuff in DPW or something like that a little bit. But, you know, we had a guy putting... he was in the DPW, and he put asphalt in the parking lot for one of the councilmen across. Wasn't even in Fraser. That was before I got there. That didn't work out very well for him.
Thank you.
I've heard those great stories too. I would like to thank you for being here this evening, and I'm going to give you one opportunity to tell us anything you'd like to tell us that we haven't asked you, or that you'd just like to leave us with. And then I'm also going to ask you to, I know you know this community very well, you live here, you've worked here, you were back in City Hall today with people whom you know some well. I was wondering if you could give us a little, something you may have learned that you didn't know about Clawson, and also give us just a little takeaway about what you really enjoy about Clawson, something, just a little advertorial that you could share with someone, something wonderful about Clawson.
Well, you've said a mouthful there.
I know, sorry.
I don't know where to start. again, I told you about being parochial, that I don't like it. But I was working out this morning with my workout partner, Dan, and I said, he was making some comments to me about hitting the floor run and stuff like that. And I said, you know, Dan, I don't believe there's another person on this planet that's more qualified to be your city manager. And that's a heck of a thing to say. That's ugly to say. But I don't know, I've been here for a while, and I'm fully invested in your community. I live here, own a house, not going anywhere. I was down in the sun and came back for your interview. Glad to do it. My wife and son are still there. Hopefully I'll get back, and if you hire me, I ain't going back. Clausen, you know, when you came up with that theme, little city with a big heart. When I first became city manager here, Bill Wallenczak was the landscape architect in the city of Southfield. And his wife, Gloria, was from Clausen. So now, and all he said, you know, Wayno, that's a nice little community you got over there. It's clean, the houses are clean, the people are nice, it's tight knit. They got the 4th of July, the fireworks that they put on there. They got the nice parade. Every place I go, yeah, at Clausen. Yeah, I know about Clausen. That's over there by Royal Oak. Yeah, Clausen's good. So we can be proud of the community we've got. I remember when the guy made that, carved that sign there, and I'm like looking at that. And that's when I had a pin made, the little Clausen. We still have the pins. Stacy, we still have the pins? Yeah. We took the pins, and we took that, and I had pins made. I think they were about 65 cents a piece. They're probably about $8 now. But, yeah, so, and then God be trusted, the guy did that. And it's the people. It's the people of the community that make it the great place that it is. So, you know, when you look at the volunteerism here in Clausen, you take a look at Barb and Warner or Seppi. Warner's gone. I used to call them Mr. and Mrs. Clausen. They're involved in everything. And you got a lot of people that are like that. Maury Lysing and Joe Schwab. And these guys have, you know, been around forever and did all these great things. And it's going to continue. It's going to tend to continue. And I'd like to help it.
Well, we thank you for flying into the cold weather to meet with us. We really appreciate that, and we thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much. And
have a wonderful evening.
I don't know if it's good if I can stick around and listen. Okay, if you don't mind.
We don't mind. So next item on our agenda would be public comment. So if anyone in the public would like to speak, feel free to come to the podium and state your name and address and whatever you'd like to state, and we'd be happy to hear you. Going once? Let's just end it. No one wants to speak tonight, so thank you for that public comment. Does anyone need a break before we enter facilitated discussion? Yes?
Let's think about 10 minutes, we can go over our own notes.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. We're going to look over the information that was given to us this afternoon, and then we will resume and have a facilitated discussion. Thank you very much.
21:30, just 12 minutes.
Okay, 12 minutes. Okay, we are back. We have interviewed our 3 candidates. We are here to have a facilitated discussion about how we may want to move forward in this process. Before us, we have Mr. James Matrino from GovHR. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
And thank you for introducing me, because I seem to fail at that. There are lots of ways to facilitate a post-candidate discussion. Actually, in that break, we were talking about, needing to do this in public and the sensitivity to have for we're all humans. But you have an obligation to discuss the candidates that were in front of you. One of the ways and tools that we can use to get you kind of quickly to a place where you can focus in, and this group did a really good job with the last discussion you had in the first round, is just to go among yourself and rank order the 3 candidates. So just a quick first preference, second preference, third preference. And because someone is third doesn't mean they're out of consideration for you, but forcing you to rank order allows you to expose positions so that you can really focus in on where your discussion should go from there. So that's my suggestion. I'll leave it to the mayor to maybe ask or lead how she would like the council members to proceed.
I am in agreement of that process unless someone has an opposing view or a better idea. Mr. Shepherd.
Well, and I think I mentioned it the last time, and again, it's just a personal allegory about being a coach and having to draft players and having to go through an evaluation and being in situations where you do evaluations live, and then 20 minutes later, out of a group of what you have with what information you just gathered together to make a decision. So a lot of times that does come with not regret, but forethought that, gee, I wish I'd had more time in order to think about that. So I'm just throwing that out there that perhaps there's maybe something that we want to take a look at in our leisure, but have it be at another point in time where we make that final decision and have that luxury of going back with the information that we do have and digest it thoroughly before we make that decision.
Okay. Mr. Sampson, thoughts?
I understand what you're saying, but to hold us off, if we were going to do a third round of interviews, nothing's changed. The same 3 are going to show. That would be a place to put another person in. If you were going to do that, something needs to change in order to have another meeting over this. I'm real strong right now. Out of the 3 candidates, they're all good, but I have my ranking now, so I don't think the information is going to change to me. But it's a board of 4.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah, Councilman Shepherd, I share your sentiments in that we've received a lot of information. It'd be nice to have time to digest it. I don't think we need to re-interview them, for example, or bring in additional people. It's just, got this information, do we need a day or 2 to come back? Honestly, I'm open to either. I'm ready to make a ranking now, but if some of us are uncomfortable with that and want to sit down and have this discussion maybe in a couple days, and again, we don't want to stretch it out too long in respect to the candidates. We shouldn't leave it hanging out there for weeks. But I'm open to that idea, but I am ready to go forward now also. So that's a great way of saying.
It's a mayor's.
There we go.
I personally think I'm not going to change my mind. I would have confidence in any of the 3, to be honest with you. I think they each bring a wealth of knowledge or inspiration, business acumen to the table. I think it literally comes down to what we individually feel are the issues most at hand that Clausen needs to address, and I will cast my votes according to that. I think I'd be leery of losing any of these candidates, even over a couple of days, because there are a couple of really good communities looking for people right now. It's also small in size, kind of like ours, right? So I would hate for anyone to say, I'm going to hold out for that other community. I would want someone to make a choice for us, if possible, and not to rush it, not to seem desperate. But I think I personally would love to put this just to I would love to be able to move on from this point and then look forward to one of these gentlemen leading us into the future and helping to be that glue and be cohesive and, just move Clausen forward. I'm really excited about the opportunity for one of these gentlemen to come in and pick up where Scott's been doing a really great job and, just move us all forward. So my preference is to address it this evening, but if someone has big misgivings about it, I'm 100% fine holding it off. I just think we need to be cautious of that. And I don't know, I would just ask what's going to change in the process, if there's anything that would change your thought process that would make it worth holding off on a day or two. And let's go to you, Councilmember Anderson, you said you can go either way. Let's say you don't get to go either way, you must pick one.
Oh, I'm ready to make a decision today.
Okay, great.
But I also respect those who are not comfortable with that. It reminds me when I was on a jury once, federal jury out in federal court in Ann Arbor, and we listened to all the witnesses. As it turned out, we finished up. It was a 3-week trial, 80 hours in the courtroom. We literally wrapped up at like 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And I heard the judge said, well, we've heard a lot of evidence. The jury has been deliberating, but I really hope you don't just quickly make a decision so you can get out of here and be done for the weekend. And we all agreed and said, no, we're not going to come after all this evidence. We're not going to, 2 hours, okay, quick, get it done. The weekend begins, this thing. So that's why, and we came back Monday, spent a whole day, and then that was it, right? So like I said, Councilman Shepherd, I sympathize with where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. So in a great act of decisive leadership, I can go either way.
Great, that's great. So if we started the ranking process, would that make you feel any more or less comfortable? Are you really,
I think, I don't remember,
go?
I think one or both or two had mentioned that, the decision that we would come up with, I don't think we would go wrong, to be quite honest. But at the same time, if there was something there that, was either came out and Joe, I didn't catch that, or that's a big thing that I missed, that I thought, okay, maybe that deserves a second look. That's the reason why. Again, it's one of those things that, having gone through, it's not the same as picking 10-year-olds, right? So
Hopefully not.
Okay, but at the same time, it's for that point in time and for our point in time, it's just as important, right? That we make the right decision, that it's used with common sense. I like data. Obviously there's a lot of data here. There's a lot of subjective information that we're going to have to process. I don't know. I just, for me, it would be, give it a chance to, it's like when you're writing an email, right? You're reacting to something. It's maybe good to throw it out there and then let it sit and think about it and look at it again in the morning. And I guess that's kind of where I am.
Well, I would suggest when you talk about going over the information, finding out, did I miss something? If you were to miss something, you would only learn that by conversation with maybe one of us. So that would be part of the deliberation process. I know, for example, in the jury room with 7 other jurors in a civil lawsuit, it was amazing sometimes what got missed and what somebody would say. So I didn't hear that. And I remember they told us that's why you have a jury, right? So if any of us missed something in the interpretation, it needs to be discussed here, not offline. So
let's throw out let's do a ranking. And if it seems difficult for some reason, and I don't want to,
I can do ranking. That's not the thing,
can.
right? The thing is that, it's the haste and it's important that we get it done. And again, I agree with Mr. Sampson's point, let's get it over with at this point, because I don't think we need to delay. And I also understand your perspective that, hey, if there's any outside chance that someone may be looking at another community, let's not, lose that opportunity. But I'm just saying, a lot of times, if we take a look at it, let it air out, then maybe that's the best way. But, if it's the decision of, everyone else to move forward, I'm ready to give my 3. I guess that's my
Would
point.
time to look at your notes or just take a break for a little bit so you could regroup? Would that help? Is there anything we can do to help you to facilitate this?
No, we can do it now.
today?
I
Not
mean,
that we have to do
again,
it today.
it would be,
Right?
It sounds like he's ready now, yeah.
we can go now if we need to.
Are you sure? Because I'm not trying to push you.
No, no,
Right.
I
This
mean,
is really
it's-
important, and everyone's opinion is critical, and I don't want to diminish your feelings
No.
on this at all.
No,
Okay.
I've drafted immediately after doing evaluations, so it doesn't
Okay.
matter.
And,
Like I said, there's a rationale as far as why I would think we should do that, but if it's, if we can do it now, then fine. We can do
Fair enough.
Pretty sure there's no crying in city manager selections, right?
that. No, exactly not.
It's a tough business.
Remember that? No crying in baseball? That was,
It was also, baseball's not the only sport.
well, those were girls, right? The boys would never cry, not the 10-year-old boys. Okay, so then let's do a ranking. There's three. So let's go
2, 3.
top three, 1, 2, 3.
Who wants to?
Councilmember Anderson, you want to go first?
Okay. I'd like to start, Mr. Vitrino, thank you very much for bringing us this field of candidates. I'm really quite happy with all of them. I really am. My only disappointment here is we can't hire all three. So, but as far as my ranking is concerned, I think just experience means a lot. Experience is very valuable for making decisions, for managing people, running organizations. The only downside of experience is you get old while you get it. So, but that said, I will rank number 1, Mr. O'Neill, Mr. 2, Raker, and number 3, Mr. LeKemper.
Wait, how do I want to do this? 1,
I got it.
okay, good, thanks, because I'm going to confuse
I
myself.
got it.
Councilmember Sampson?
I too believe in the knowledge. I think my number 1 has more knowledge for, he's worked with Detroit and all that, and he seems to have a lot of background from other places. Plus, he's got a pretty extensive second job. He seemed to be the best presenter. I would do Raker, Bacampo,
Camper.
and O'Neill, and O'Neill.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Thank you. I think, as I was looking at where we are in the community and where I'd like, us to try and go, it's important to have that experience, but at the same time, there's a fresh perspective, I think, is also important. And for that reason, I have Raker, LeCamper, and O'Neill.
Okay, and I really liked all of them, and I know that doesn't mean anything, but based on also experience and my rankings are O'Neill, Raker, and LeCamper, in that order. So that gives us,
Yeah, I can give back to you for your top 2 candidates. Well, actually, all candidates. O'Neill, it's a 3-1-3-1. Raker is a 1-2-1-2. So I'm telling you back the position they are. And LeCamper is 2-3-2-3.
I don't understand that.
So the number of people that had O'Neill as 3, 2 individuals did, and 2 had him as 1. The number of people that had Riker as 1, or the top is 2 people had that, and 2 people had him at 2. And then for LeCamper, 2 people had him at 2, and 2 people had him at 3.
Now, doesn't that make
Are you with me?
Much clearer now.
does it seem clearer? Diagrams, please? No. So Mr. Raker had 2 number 1s and 2 number 2s.
Correct.
Mr. LeCamper had 2 number 3s and 2 number 2s.
Correct.
Mr. O'Neill had 2 number 1s and 2 number 3s.
Correct.
So that gets us nowhere except we all like 2 people. So let's go beyond that. Let's go to, what if we go to 2 people? Are you guys comfortable knocking it down to 2? Your votes.
I think we already have, based on this.
Well, no, we're going to take one out of the running. Oh, we can't do that. No, it won't help either.
At this point, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
It's like we're symmetrically balanced.
Yeah, we are. Okay, so
We are
let's,
middle of the road on everybody.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you did it by average, right?
Could do that, which will also,
It's data-driven.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We actually could do that.
Yeah,
8, 3, 6,
an
7, 8, 9,
easier way to
10.
do your average would be to, I have a grid. So if you add them across, with lowest number would be the average question that you suggested.
I don't have a grid, and I already added, and if my math is correct, and I hate math, just for the record, I have Mr. Raker has 6, Mr. LeCamper has 10, and Mr. O'Neill is at 8.
Correct.
Okay.
With the lowest value being the closest to number one.
Like golf.
Correct.
Right? So we're playing golf with our
Thank you, Mayor.
candidates right now, because why not?
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay,
Yeah.
so are you comfortable then taking the top 2 and then doing another vote?
Well,
I don't know how else to do it.
Who's the top two?
O'Neill and Raker. That's based on the numbering system. From the 1, 2, 3.
Right now, I'm thinking Mr. Shepherd has the best idea, is we all go back, look at the tape tonight and tomorrow, and then have a special meeting Wednesday?
I think we've gotten it down to 2. I don't know how, if it's 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, taking another vote, how that would change.
It'll change, it could change,
It could.
Okay.
Once you present with less options.
All right.
unless you're saying it's not going to.
No, I have no idea.
I don't know, it
Sure,
could
it
change, it
could.
could not change, I don't know. Well, the bottom line is, we're going to have to come to consensus, right? We're going to have to come to consensus. We are not going to, I guess if we vote the same way, it will most likely fall the same way. So can we have a quick conversation on what you feel is the most important trait for our city manager? I feel like, given this right here, if you went back and watched tape, I'm doubtful that you'll come back with anything different. I don't know what would change to make you want to come back, nor do I understand why you would want to watch this all over again. You just lived it. There are so many other options out there, as riveting as this may be.
He's a sports guy. He's used to watching tape. What was that?
True,
Exactly.
that's true.
Analyze the swing. Sorry.
Will anyone budge on their 1 or 2? Is anyone willing to budge on their 1 or 2? That's my
Honestly,
question.
I would prefer to just restate, now, instead of us giving an order, we each give our top 2. In other words, we each have to pick who we're willing to eliminate.
Okay, I feel it'll come up, well, all right.
Is that okay? Is that
Yeah,
acceptable,
sure.
everyone?
What's your top 2?
My top 2 is O'Neill and Raker.
All right. Councilmember Sampson.
Raker and Lapham.
All right. Councilmember Shepherd.
It's Raker and LeCamper.
Okay, and mine are O'Neill and Raker as well.
Who
So,
did get us?
what's
mean,
that? I
from-
did good. I think I was going to say it changed, but.
From that perspective, I mean, you did gather data, and it didn't change necessarily your rank order, but there's one candidate that 4 of you have as a preferred 1 or 2, and there's 2 candidates that you have at also the other 2 candidates only have 2 checks as preferred as 1 or 2. So
Good job.
do you follow
Well,
what
it's
I'm?
better, though.
it-
We're in a better position.
I mean,
We
there
did move
is
the needle.
progress. It
Yeah.
still doesn't get those that want a different number 1, their candidate, but you have found a candidate that is 1 or 2 for everybody. And so that, now, of course, that burden lays to the 2 people that have that person as their number 2, and 2 people
Yeah.
have that person as their number 1. But that vote did clearly indicate some alignment on a 1 or 2.
So I'm just going to throw it out there. Would anyone change their vote to Mr. O'Neill? Is there any possibility? And you can honestly say yes or no, and then that will move us forward. Would you ever consider him?
No, never.
No?
And-
You would never consider him?
And I think it's fair to ask why. I think,
I never had a problem saying it. In all the groups, a lot of effort, a lot of stuff was put into the two presentations. He didn't want the presentation. He just wanted to give what we had. And when you look back at some of the things that, like he said in his first interview, I've grown up a lot. And I don't yell at people anymore, but we all have experience in the last year. So it's kind of like, he's had a shot at Clausen. Let's pick the two that haven't, because we already know what we're going to get for O'Neill. He's already told us, and there was some stuff in there where he said, I'm never going to evaluate the low guy, union guy, but all companies do.
Well, I think in fairness, he said he wasn't going to. I'm just going to project what he meant
Yeah.
and not to stick up for him. But I would assume what he meant was,
Yeah.
I'm not going to because I don't supervise them. He said he would
No, the way
do
he-
his,
yeah, the way I picked
right?
him-
And that's how most organizations work. The
No, but when I-
immediate supervisor,
What I picked up from him is like, in a union situation, just let them younger guys just go, because they got the union to protect them, so.
Oh, he said it was a waste of time.
Waste of time.
for him,
yes, matter
but
of
for
fact.
him to do it, that's understandable.
I'm not sure if that was the case or not.
Okay, well,
So-
I don't want to speak for him, but
No, I know.
my
That's, again,
interpretation,
kind
my
of where we
interpretation was that, and that would be the reason why, because generally you only evaluate your subordinates, right? The people who are directly with you, and then anyone else down the line would do that. But if that's your reasoning, it's okay.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Shepherd, anything?
As I said to start off, I'm looking for someone with a fresh perspective that has what I would call fire in the belly, that has that desire, that isn't necessarily coming with a lot of, how should I say, one of the concerns that I had was the number of communities that Mr. O'Neill had been through. And I think that may have been an opinion at some point in time. I still think that's, while that experience is important, I'm concerned about longevity. And I don't necessarily see that.
Okay, I would say he has a career that spanned over 30 years, and
But also it concerns me.
well, I mean, he's willing to come, and my personal reason for wanting him is he has experience with DBW, he has experience with infrastructure, he has experience with garnering money for our fledgling financial community, he has experience with resources that we need, external resources, he has experience with people in the county, and he's just a huge wealth of knowledge. And the one thing that I feel City Hall is lacking right now is institutional knowledge, historic knowledge, from my viewpoint, because we've lost people in the past few years. Not that the people here don't know anything, but I just feel like he would be great glue, and I've used that so many times lately, I don't know why. He would be great glue for just for establishing building blocks for us for the future, for 3 years, 5 years, however long he would choose to be here, should it work out for everybody. And those are my reasons for actually wanting him. The other gentleman spoke very nicely. I have no problem with him not putting together a presentation. He talked through it. I don't doubt for a second he would have someone else put together a presentation for him. But one of the things, the city manager's role is not to be able to do everything. Their job is that information and their ability to put things together and get people motivated and accomplish tasks. But kind of like whomever said it was, not an expert in anything, and that's 100% true. And that's their role. It's not a discredit to what they know or what they're doing. It's actually by nature what the job is. So understanding that is important. So that is why I want him 100%. I liked Mr. Raker. I liked Mr. Raker. I think he has good energy, but he also does not have a lot of municipal experience. I liked Mr. LeCamper a lot. I don't know how you could not like that gentleman. He's extremely kind and speaks well and has good management ideas. but not municipal experience. And I feel like the one thing this community needs is someone with municipal experience, which is why I would want Mr. O'Neill to be my number one. So that's why I'm just imploring that right now. And I will then say, Mr. Anderson, please explain to us why you have your choices, such as they are.
Well, I like them both. But again, in terms of experience, Mr. O'Neill is, significantly beyond the others. Also, I was encouraged by the fact that he seemed to know where to go get money. That's another issue, grants, funds, things like that. That's an important thing if we're going to move forward with infrastructure improvements. I mean, yes, we'll have to pass a millage probably, but if we can reduce the amount by using other means, I think that's important. It's funny, I've growing up, my parents were a bit older than me. I was the youngest, and I was used to hanging around with older people a lot. My parents, my great aunts, great uncles. And it's just funny, when older people are speaking from experience, I learned, it's not always very smooth. Because it's like a person has knowledge and experience, and it's like they got to funnel it through a pipe and get it out. A younger person has less water, so it flows smoother. Older people seem to have a lot of water, and when they start sharing their knowledge, it seems a little rough. It's because there's so much to draw on. So I know just in their styles, all of them presented well. But just listening to Mr. O'Neill is just like, yeah, that's an old hand, all right. Yeah, he's been through the mill a few times, and he may not be smooth, but I think he knows what he's doing.
Well, I like that he's energized still with this position, and that speaks volumes to me. He's not looking for just a community or a new community or a community closer to home. This is his home. It's always been his home, from what I understand, and he's definitely dedicated here. But in saying that, if no one is willing to budge, is anyone willing to budge at all? No? Then I'm very reluctantly going to budge. This breaks my heart. And I'm going to say I will move my position, and I will make Mr. Raker my first choice, because I really want Clausen to move on. But I think we're doing our community, in saying that, I feel like I'm selling our community out, because I really feel Mr. O'Neill has a wealth of knowledge, and his energy and his experience is something that we truly need, but I'm not willing to beat my head on the wall with this if no one else is willing to ever move forward on this. So I'll change my vote to Mr. Raker.
You want to make a motion?
How about, you're fine? Yes, I'm so disappointed I'm doing this. I'm so disappointing myself right now. I'm trying to be a big girl here. I would like to make a motion that we that we instruct GovHR to make an offer to Mr. Raker to come and be our new city manager. I'd also like to throw in there that if he says no, we ask Mr. O'Neill next. That's my concession.
I'll support that.
That you support it. I'm just shrugging my shoulders.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Look at that. You did a good job bringing the
I
consensus.
don't feel like I did a
Madam
good job.
Mayor.
I feel like I did a really horrible thing. Nothing against Mr. Raker. Mr. Raker, ultimate respect. Mr. LeCamper, ultimate respect.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill, ultimate respect.
Yes. Again, they were all excellent candidates.
Thank you very much. I will stay in touch either directly to you or through Scott with the next steps.
Okay.
And thank you,
Thank you.
Scott.
Thank you.
And with that, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, motion to adjourn?
Second.
You can't dismiss us. You have to adjourn us. If you dismiss us, I just go to the bathroom
Yeah,
and come back.
whatever. Roll call. Sure, I don't care.
Okay, Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Paula.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
It was turning into.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a really wonderful evening.